Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the Marvel Cinematic Universe comes a sequel focusing on one of the most popular Avengers of all time, a hero deep in the world of political espionage, searching for an assassin who's mysterious yet familiar at the same time. We're talking about Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Captain America the Winter Soldier was directed by Joe and Anthony Russo from a screenplay by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. It was released in the United States on April 2, 2014, and was distributed by Walt Disney Pictures. The Winter Soldier focuses on characters created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby and published by Marvel Comics. Captain America debuted in Captain America Comics #1 in March of 1941. The film is a sequel to 2011's The First Avenger and continues the story of Steve Rogers, the shield-slinging Avenger known as Captain America. In the film, Cap is entrenched as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., working alongside Black Widow on missions for the U.S. government and overseen by Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. As the movie goes on, Cap begins to question his role as a soldier and a hero as political agendas begin pulling him in different directions. Cap crosses paths with a mysterious assassin known as the Winter Soldier and realizes there's more going on than meets the eye as he uncovers Hydra's involvement and ultimately the Winter Soldier's identity. Captain America the Winter Soldier was a smash at the box office, earning over $714 million on a budget of $170 million. It was also a major hit with critics, many of whom praised it for its action and intricate storytelling. It was followed by a sequel in 2016, Captain America Civil War. Thanks to the story, the action, the performances, and the plot, The Winter Soldier remains one of the most important films in the MCU and one of the most popular comic book films of all time. And that's the lowdown on Captain America, the Winter Soldier. So in our constant pursuit of looking at, watching, rewatching, reviewing, discussing, debating, theorizing, sometimes fantasy booking, pop culture, geek culture, movies, TV, music, everything. 6M's, kids. Look at the description. Don't get lost. Stay with us. Part of that deal is, of course, Marvel. And as Marvel fans, as typically we are on almost all the stuff that they do, most of the time we can't really rebook anything or recast anything. For the most part, we seem to be pretty fairly happy with what they do with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There'll be discussion. There'll be, what if they did this? What if, no pun intended, what if they tried that? What if, whatever. But for the most part, whenever we discuss Marvel here on the show, it's to review, sometimes maybe a watch along, sometimes it's just to discuss what's coming up, what's in the future, or what's already come and gone. We've done several of the MCU movies here, and we've not done them all because that would be a bunch, but we will eventually get all of the MCU films done. And so today's episode is another chapter in the ongoing saga of the 6M does all the Marvel movies. So we've done some. It's a respectable number. It's nowhere near. I don't even think we're at half. We're nowhere near half. But we're getting there. We'll get there eventually. But this is a good one. They're all good, in my opinion, but this is a good one. This is a great one. And in the minds of some people, Captain America the Winter Soldier may be the best of the bunch. So Phil, out the gate, man, right out the gate, is Captain America the Winter Soldier the best Marvel film so far? If so, why? And if not, why?
I don't think that it is the best, but I do think that it is firmly around the top 5. For me, I think at the time when it came out, I thought it was the best. But now you've got too many things that you can put in contention for the best. I think, for my money, Black Panther's in the running for the best. You've still got, I think, Infinity War or Endgame, even if you want to just count those two movies as like a self-contained movie in itself. I feel like that's in the running. I don't know. I feel like I don't know if people don't really talk about how good both Guardians movies are as well. I feel like both either one of those Guardians movies can slide into the top 5 as well.
Hmm.
Um, I just think it's tough competition for me to just say it's absolutely the best.
Right. Okay. Okay. So here's a maybe it'll be a little bit easier to pinpoint. Is it the best solo Marvel film so far?
Mm.
Because that competes it with Black Panther, so maybe not.
Um. Yeah.
It's tougher, isn't it?
It is tough. But I think it if you say is it the best solo, I think it's between Winter Soldier, Black Panther, and possibly Shang-Chi. I was really impressed with Shang-Chi.
Yeah. Same here. Um, as wrestling fans, we often talk about John Cena with good reason. And you and I recently were talking about Cody Rhodes in AEW, which is sort of not the exact same thing, but it's similar in terms of here's this really really nice white meat baby face, sort of all American salute, camouflage, the flag, all this other stuff. And it's funny because back in the day, pro wrestling rant time, kids, back in the day in the 80s, that was a surefire way to get over. Wave the flag, Hulk Hogan, Sergeant Slaughter, Dusty Rhodes, for God's sake. It was a surefire way to get over and get a pop from the crowd. These days, not so much. Not for a long time, actually. Not for a good long time. These days, it's kind of weird. You have to do it in the right moments, the right amount of flavor. So when you talk about Captain America, dude, now you've got the ultimate in the history of comic books, maybe besides Superman, white meat babyface, at least in the MCU, I would say. But man, and you and I did the first Avenger and talked about, had Evans been one step to the left or right and taken this from a different perspective, we wouldn't be talking about how great of an actor this guy is, especially in this role. But man, once again in this film, the red, white, and blue, the nation's greatest hero, possibly the world's greatest hero. He is everything he's sold to be, and then some, and a whole lot more than that. I mean, what are your thoughts on this film being a natural continuation of what we saw from the first Avenger, keeping in mind that we had the Avengers movie in between?
Um, Now I do think that it's probably the best sequel out of any Marvel film, and
Ah, that's good.
I would put that even against Avengers. I would say that this is the best like second film of any of the trilogies.
Yeah.
Um, and man, I mean, the only other movie that I think that comes close in terms of second movie is probably Guardians.
Mm.
Um, but that's it. Like, it's kind of hard to do a good follow up. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, depends on what you think on Iron Man 2. I'm not very high on Iron Man 2. Um, yeah, Thor Dark World is I don't know. That's not a lot of people's favorites as well. Uh, it's hard to do a second movie. And so I feel like this is like probably the best like glow up from the first movie. And I really enjoy First Avengers, but I feel like when most people look at this franchise, it's kind of like how people look at the Dark Knight trilogy, where a lot of people are like, the Dark Knight is the best movie of that trilogy.
Mm.
And I feel like for most people with the Cap trilogy, Winter Soldier is that.
Mm. Good call. Good call. I love your comments. I'm with you on everything you said. I do as well believe it's the best sequel. Now, in a different world, in a better world where Chadwick Boseman was not gone, and we got the solid Black Panther 2 that we were all hoping for and anticipating, maybe we would not be having this conversation. It could be, oh man, Black Panther 2 was everything one was, and then some. Winter Soldier was my favorite sequel, but not now. We'll never know, sadly, because as we know, he's gone. But no, I'm with you on everything you said. It's a big movie, kids. The runtime on this film is 2 hours and 18 minutes. Take time. There's plenty of meat on the bone. Tell your story. I'm not one of these guys like, oh, this movie too long. Shut up. I hear that crap, and I'm not going to say I've never been guilty and said, oh well, it could have clipped off 15 minutes, but dude, I'm a sucker for the MCU stuff. I'm in the bag for this universe. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Winter Soldier was 10 minutes too long. Dude, I'm not doing it. I love this movie so much. Watching it again for this episode reminded me of how much I love it. And usually the first thing we do is talk about the cast. Guys, listen. If you're a Marvel fan, you know why you're here. You know who's in this joint. Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Sebastian Stan, Anthony Mackie making his first turn as Sam Wilson slash Falcon. Kobe Smulders is back as Maria Hill. Frank Grillo as Brock Rumlow, who's got a pretty substantial part in this movie. We meet Emily Van Camp, who is also Sharon Carter, also known as Agent 13. Haley Atwell is back as Peggy Carter. We gushed on her in the first Avenger because she freaking deserves it. Sam Jackson is back as Nick Fury, and we know all that. But I want to specifically talk about somebody before we dive into this film, Phil. Robert Redford as Alexander Pierce. In this day and age, how do you know that your cinematic universe has made it? Because you freaking got Robert Redford. To me, this is one of the biggest gets for this entire thing, for the entire MCU. And not only did they get him, but dude freaking nailed it. He is believable. He's dramatic. He's captivating. Every time the camera's on him, he has this air of respectability, of professionalism. Dude, talk to me about Robert Redford as Alexander Pierce.
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely brings legitimacy to this thing. I mean, if uh, if in some ways, Tommy Lee Jones brings a kind of legitimacy to the first movie being like an army movie, like I would say Redford brings like legitimacy to this movie as a spy movie.
Mm, good call. Yeah. Yeah, he gives it a different flavor. He gives it a different tone. It doesn't, it's hard to say this stuff when you got people wearing costumes. But dude, drop the suit, and this is a spy action thriller. That's what this is. Like, it
Yeah,
just does. I'm not gonna say it doesn't feel like a Marvel film because that's not true, but it doesn't feel like a comic book film to me. You know?
yeah, I definitely feel like the reason why a lot of people love Winter Soldier so much is it is a comic book movie, but it doesn't try to shy away from being a comic book movie. It doesn't seem like it's embarrassed by its source material,
Hmm.
but it also tries to elevate it into being more than just funny pages, right? So it's not
Yeah.
like I read the Winter Soldier run. I read the Brubaker run is easily one of my favorite comic book runs ever. Um, I said last time we recorded that it's what got me into Captain America as a character. Um, and so I remember that run, and I remember how it was very close to like noir comics. It was very close to like the spy comics.
Mhm.
And I feel like the movies captured that tone and kind of raised the gambit a little bit.
Yeah. The tone is perfect word for this. It's just um, everything in between. It just like I said, it just has a different flavor, and it does capture something. And it's that throwback '70s, all the President's Men, Robert Redford. I mean, just that spy slash espionage thriller. Sneakers was another one that Redford had. I think that's the name of it. And it's just that idea of this guy. If, like you said, if you're going to make a movie like that, you get this guy. I mean, it's perfect. Um, a few other casting notes before we get cranking here. Georges St. Pierre as Batroc. Um, former MMA guy, kids, and I thought he did pretty darn good job in this movie, and we'll get there. Um, Gary Shandling is back as Senator Stern. Uh, I freaking love this character to death. I hate that we lost Gary Shandling because I wanted to see him come back many times again. Um, Jasper Sitwell it is on board. Freaking great. I just think, and Phil, we talk a lot about why does the Marvel stuff work? Why does it work? If you can nutshell it, part of your nutshell explanation would have to include the line, they get the right people to do this stuff. Like, not
Yeah.
just behind the scenes, but on camera. Dude, everyone in this film, in my opinion, feels perfectly cast in every role.
Yes. I feel like everybody feels perfectly cast, and I feel like if you were somehow not on board with Evans as Cap in the first movie. Like I feel like this one sealed it. Like I feel like this one, um, in a lot of ways, I feel like this is like him comfortable in the role, and this is him just like he's Captain America at this point. Like there's no needing to sell us anymore.
Ah, good point. And you know, speaking of Redford, this thought crossed my mind as we started making notes for this stuff, man. What about Redford in another time in an alternate reality? Because the multiverse is a real popular thing now all of a sudden. In one multiverse out there, Robert Redford in the 70s slash 80s is Captain America. I mean, dude, you know, I'd buy that. I think that'd be freaking perfect. You know what I mean? Like he could have pulled it off had the timing been different. Yeah, dude, why not? You know?
Yeah, even if not that, like you put some white streaks in his hair, he's easily 616 Nick Fury, easily.
Ooh, holy God, I love that too. Oh wow, that might be better than Cap. That's pretty good. Uh, well, as we said, kids, it's a long movie. We're gonna try not to make it 2 hours and 18 minutes for you, but we're gonna dive into this sucker. Um, the Winter Soldier takes place in 2014, and Marvel pretty much sticks to actual time, except for when the snap happens, and then everything from that point on is 5 years ahead. So as of right now, as we record this, they are in 2026 in the MCU if they're following the film timeline. Okay, so um, but no, it's 3 years after the events of the first event. Well, okay, after the end of the first Avenger, you get it. They thought him out. He was a capsicle. So there we go. Um, this movie, as we said, it does stand out. It's different. It has a different tone. There's murder, bloodshed, espionage, cloak and dagger, adult themes. Phil, is this a kids movie?
I don't think that it is. I think kids can enjoy it, but
Hmm.
I don't think most of the tones of this movie and most of the ideas in the movie probably went way over their heads.
Yeah, I agree. Um, we know how this movie kicks off. We get to meet Sam. Sam, I think, was maybe the first person on camera when this thing kicks off. I don't think it was Cap or Steve, excuse me. Um, but they're running, and it's in Washington, obviously, and we get the on your left from Steve, and we get it like on the third time. Sam's a little frustrated, like, "Oh, come on!" And he's just Steve is 100 miles an hour, obviously. Dude, Anthony Mackie, and we got to gush about Mackie for a second because I think the first time I really, maybe not saw him, but really took notice was that We Are Marshall. And oh my God, I cried during that movie. And when he's in the locker room and Matthew McConaughey is like hitting his shoulder and he's telling him my shoulder's fine. And then he tears up and he's choked up and he said, my shoulder's fine. Dude, I'm like, I got wet eyes, man. I'm like, oh, this guy, I love this guy. So when he was announced as Sam Wilson, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be so great. Um, how important was it for them to nail the chemistry and relationship between Evans and Mackie, also Rogers and Wilson?
Well, I mean, they already have such great chemistry because they're friends in real life.
Hmm.
Um, but there's certain things that I looked at watching this movie because I tell people, as a big fan of MCU Sam, um, when people came away from Endgame and were asking why did he pick Sam, I feel like all of your answers are in this movie.
Yeah.
And I always tell people like watch Winter Soldier. I feel like they tell you directly why he picked him. And I mean, that was before the show, of course, and the show made it even more clear. But man, just think about the fact of what you just said. The second movie comes on, he's the first guy we see.
Hmm.
Um, uh, when he's trying to get reacclimated into the world, um, you don't see him reach out to any of the other Avengers. They wouldn't know how to help him. But the person
Oh.
that does help him is Sam. In a lot of ways, when we get the scene later in the movie where he says, "When I didn't have anything, I had Bucky," um, it's kind of a reverse of that now, where he didn't have anything else when he came out of the ice, and the only person that was able to relate and help him was Sam. And I feel like the way they established that relationship is just so good, and the way that Um, the way that Mackie plays it is just so convincing. He doesn't do a whole lot in this movie. He doesn't have a whole bunch of, you know, emotional lines, but all of the small stuff they do is there.
That dude, I mean, I think you're connecting the dots for anybody that was maybe on the fence about the whole Sam Wilson becoming Cap thing. I mean, yeah. I mean, if anyone is going to pick a successor to who gets the shield, it should be the guy that had the shield. It shouldn't be anybody else. And like you said, the connection these two characters have is tremendous. And we get that from the dialogue here, where they speak a little bit, and he's telling them about the Trouble Man soundtrack from '72 by Marvin Gaye, which, yes, kids, is actually a really good album. Uh, but yeah, he's getting ready to walk off, and he says it's different, isn't it? He says what? He says, your bed's not right, and he talks about, because he already has that experience of, when I got back home, I'm sleeping on the floor because the bed, I feel like I'm gonna fall through it, that kind of thing. I mean, that he's already kind of been there, not in the same way, but it's almost like, you don't know what it's like to be a cop unless you've been a cop. You don't know what certain things are like unless you've been there. And especially with the military, you can't, having a conversation with non-military versus someone who was in the military is a much different conversation. So, the fact that they tapped into that and leaned on it from the jump, I think made it even more pivotal of a moment when you realize these two guys have a connection from the start of this movie. And I think it worked for them later on for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that conversation. I just think the fact that he is just used to walking through life and meeting all these people, especially through Shield, where he meets all these people that are enamored by him, and they don't really have like a relationship with him. Even like when Nat comes and picks him up later, she doesn't really have like a friendship with him, not yet. Um, and so when he just talked to him briefly and he got ready to walk away, and he was like, "Yeah, it's your bed, right?" And he like tried to have real conversation with him. Like you get the feeling that he just doesn't get a lot of that, and I think that's why he connected with Sam, and that's why he sought him out later in the movie.
Yeah, makes sense, because it's like Sam wasn't fangirling over him, which, these guys are getting recognized in their universe. And it's like, oh, hi, I'll give you an autograph. Take a selfie, sure. But it's not the same conversation, someone actually trying to understand him. I love when Widow shows up to pick him up, and Steve tells him, "Thanks for the run. That's what you want to call running." And Sam says, "Oh, that's how it is." He goes, "Oh, that's how it is." So good. I would like to think that that was ad libbed, but I can't swear to that. I just thought it was a really nice touch.
Yeah, yeah. I think all of the lines when she comes to pick him up are great. Even Nat coming and saying she's coming looking for a fossil.
It's
All
great.
that stuff is great.
He says, "Can't run everywhere," and Sam says, "No, no, you can't." Like, because he's checking her out. I'm sorry, I'm checking her out too. Her in that car? Are you kidding me? Whew, that's good stuff, man. This thing gets moving pretty quick, dude. Because not long after this, we go straight to the Lemurian Star, which they reference quite a few times in this movie. This thing's been taken over by pirates led by Batroc. Steve and Black Widow are getting the lowdown from Rumlow, who is the leader of Strike. And Strike is sort of a, I'm trying to think of the right word here. It's a team, I guess, sort of an offshoot of Shield. And Strike stands for, and I want to get it right here. Actually, I don't think I have the acronym here for it. Interesting. Yeah. Special Tactical Reserve Good God. Special Tactical Reserve for International Key Emergencies. So yeah, they basically just gave Rumlow a bunch of dudes with guns to play with, and they were all bad. Um, who would have thunk it? A bunch of, white dudes armed to the teeth, and they're bad guys. But guess what? They're bad guys because it's Marvel, and if you know your history, Rumlow's going to become Crossbones later. So I'm not going to say I didn't remember that, but the longer I went through the movie, I was thinking, Rumlow, how do I know that name? Because I don't look at spoilers and stuff before a Marvel movie, especially, and I don't go binge Captain America in my long boxes. I just want to go see it. So, like, I think I started connecting the dots when we got the Hydra revelation later, but I was like, Rumlow, that's how I know it. That's freaking Crossbones. So took some time. Um, the bit where they're in the plane is very cool because Cap just jumps out. And what's happening here, Phil, is something that happens throughout this whole movie where Natasha is trying to hook Cap up, and she does it through the whole film, trying to get him to call somebody, speak to someone in accounting or whatever, whoever the girl is that works in Shield, and talk to this person. She's trying to get him a date. Like, they're just sort of work buddies in the beginning, and yes, they were work buddies from Avengers too. But this is kind of different. They're just sort of colleagues, um, but they've got chemistry. The two of them do. So I wonder why they didn't go down this road of, hey, let's put Natasha and Steve together. You think they're too similar? Maybe is that why they didn't do it?
I think it kind of goes against the theme of this movie because he kind of picks out right away that he's an odd man out on Shield, and
Hmm.
Natasha fits right in with Shield. Like she fits right in with doing morally gray stuff and being dishonest, and that's just not who he is. And I think that's part of why they may work as teammates or friends, but I don't know if they necessarily work uh, as a couple because she's a
Hmm.
little bit more complicated than I think he's ready for.
Oh yeah, it's that line from Avengers where she tells Loki that she has red in her ledger, and I'll never forget that line. Whoever wrote that line, pay the man because that's a good line.
Pay the man.
It's perfect, isn't it? Like it really describes her and really Clint to a large degree as well.
I also kind of believe that um, if there was a time to convince people there could be a Black Widow movie, it was right after this movie because I felt like this was the best work Scarlett had done in the role.
Hmm.
And I feel like this was probably the most fully formed the character had been up to that point.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with that. Total agreement. Um, so we get Cap jumping out of the ship, and one of the guys asks Rumlow, um, basically, did he have a chute on? He says, no, no, he did not. So he just jumps out of the plane, which is pretty much Steve Rogers slash Captain America. Um, he jumps out, and dude, the fight choreography on board the Lemurian Star is freaking great. I love it. Cap has the muted suit on. It reminds me a lot of Secret Wars, where it's like the same suits but black and darker colors and grays and very monotone. And he's under the cover of darkness, and he's working for Shield now, and he's thought this was what he wanted, but later on he doesn't. We'll get into that, but man, this is Cap being Cap, throwing the shield, doing some pretty cool stuff. I mean, man, this scene on the boat is freaking great, man. I really love this moment to be sure.
Yeah, I love the stealth scenes, like just how he's taking all of the guys on the ship down, and um, like even when the other Shield agents start sliding in, and you know, the way they did the sound editing for these scenes is great because it's like you can buy that all these Shield guys got on the ship and nobody heard them.
Yeah.
Um, I of course I think him making his way through all of these guys and then Rumlow sliding down and shooting the one guy and he's like, "Thank you." He goes, "Yeah, totally look like you need my help."
Dude, when that moment happened in my notes, I put, I like Rumlow. I don't want to see him turn heel. Like that moment really made me like him even more. He's sort of that wisecracking tough guy, but he'll have your back when it counts. And buddy, he didn't. But yeah, he's Hydra, obviously. But I just love that moment. So, as we said before, kids, this doesn't really feel a lot like a Marvel film. It's the fight choreography is what it is. The movies or the moments in the movie are freaking great. The stunts and all that stuff. I swear, dude, this feels like a Jason Statham moment where he's, one guy at a time, multiple guys at a time, taking his time, very efficient. Cap has no wasted movement, which is
None.
great. I mean, this is not like how you would envision a Punisher movie. Yes, Punisher's a soldier also, kids, but Punisher I think is more up close and personal when he needs to be. And Steve's up close and personal still looks like a surgeon going to work because he's so precise. No wasted movement from Steve Rogers here.
Yeah, I
Good
think
stuff.
I think a lot of his movements in this are just man perfect. I mean, the way he's taking down a lot of these guys, just perfect. Um, the fight with Batroc is just, it's just so great. I mean, there's so many good things about it. Just the fact that it is very physical, hand to hand, and then he gets "I thought you were more than a shield," and then Cap speaks French back and
Yeah.
throws the shield down.
Yep. He says, "Let's see." That's good stuff. Dude, if I'm remembering this correctly, he hurt him in this scene. And I can't remember. I want to say that they did like an up close and Steve actually popped him, or excuse me, Chris Evans actually popped him, I think,
Wow.
or kicked in the ribs or something. And I'm like, man, good for you, man. Get in there and scrap. You know, this guy was an MMA fighter. For God's sake, he can take care of himself. He doesn't need a stunt man. That's good stuff, man.
Yeah, and I like that their fight. It didn't just look like random fighting, and I think the choreography in this movie is very very good. Like a lot of
Yeah,
fights look like actual fights. Like it doesn't look like movie fights, right? It looks like
right.
real practical fights.
You know, if I can throw in a bit of commentary on Star Wars, people praise the second trilogy as, oh, we finally get to see young Jedi's, and I'm like, yeah, that's true. That's true. I can't argue that, and it's pretty cool. But you know, if you really close up and you slow motion the lightsaber duels, you know, he can only hit him here, he can only spin here, he can only pivot here because it's timed, it's rehearsed, it's choreographed, it's they've run through this 100 times. So no, it does look good, but like you said, I like it when it's more realistic. When it, you know, he blocks a punch, but then he doesn't count on getting hit in the ribs. He doesn't count on that knee to the shin. Like there's other stuff that feels like, oh, that's different. You know, that feels like a real soldier trying to take down another real soldier. You know, like it's never going to be perfect, but sometimes it'll be rough and tumble. So I thought that this movie had a combination of both. So I'm with you. I think the fight between Steve and Batroc was really good. The stuff with Natasha starts to get weird, and she's backing up. She tells Steve she's backing up a hard drive. She's saving Shield intel. He says the mission was to save hostages. She says no, that was your mission. Batroc, during the midst of all this, escapes, and then we go from that to the Triskelion, which is the best name ever and the coolest building ever, which is now Shield headquarters. And dude, before we get into that, what about this right out the gate? They are already teasing that there might be an issue with Natasha at some point in terms of does she have a secret agenda? Who's pulling the strings? Already, this thing they're giving it that spy thriller flavor from this scene.
I mean, yeah, I love that they don't make they don't just make Natasha into this like perfect character. Like she would just, you know, not follow orders or whatever. I love
Mhm.
that they tease that she could be a double agent. I love that we don't know who anybody's allegiances are. Like at one point, like we're even questioning Fury's allegiances.
Yeah, yeah, they leave you guessing. I love that as well. At the Triskelion, we see Steve. He's ticked off at Nick Fury. And Nick says this great line too. I don't want you doing anything you're not comfortable with. Natasha is comfortable with everything. Oh, I love that. And then Fury, I guess, as a sign of goodwill, decides to show him something, gets him in the elevator, gives him the security clearance to get in the elevator, and then he shares a story about his grandfather operating an elevator for years and how times changed, and he's got a bag of money with him, and um, that's when he takes him underground and shows him it's a great scene, man. The CG is, and you know, I'm going to praise CG. I'm going to say it looks good. Screw it, I don't care. It looks amazing. It looks great. It looks real. That's what it's supposed to look, right? So I'm crazy impressed by it. There's a fleet of helicarriers. It's called Project Insight. The first time we hear it. Uh, so Fury describes it as three next generation helicarriers synced to a network of targeting satellites. Once they're airborne, they don't need to come down. continuous suborbital flight courtesy of their new repulsor engines. If that sounds familiar to you, it should, kids, because that comes straight from the mind and genius and hands of one Tony Stark. The long range precision guns can eliminate 1,000 hostiles a minute. The satellites can read a terrorist DNA before they step out of their hole. And Fury feels like they're finally ahead of the curve. Steve says this isn't freedom, it's fear. Nick says S.H.I.E.L.D. takes the world as it is, not as they'd like it to be. He tells Steve it's time to get with the program. Steve says, don't hold your breath. Phil, they're establishing something else here. They've established that Natasha's got something funky going on. They've established that there's a fundamental difference in worldviews from arguably the two of the most powerful men in the country right at that point in time, Nick Fury and Steve Rogers. I mean, dude, right off the bat, I'm already on Steve's side like I wasn't already. But yeah, even more so. This feels like fear. This doesn't feel like protection. What about that idea? And we saw something similar to that, like in a Minority Report. This idea of we're got to be ready. We're just going to be, going to have all this stuff in case stuff goes bad. Like Steve said, this isn't. This is ruling out of fear. I mean, do you have a take on that? In other words,
Yeah, it's very smart. This is a very smartly written movie. Like it just smartly is not a word, but whatever. I'm using that word. This was this is a very well written movie. It they very clearly play off stuff like the Patriot Act and just the world we live in now, where everybody's data is being mined somewhere, and someone somewhere is selling our data. That's just the world now. Somebody somewhere knows a lot more about you than you think they know, and whether they're using that information to try and sell you things through ads and stuff on your phones, or whatever else, like that is a paranoia thing right now. And when you look at just post 9/11 world, like all of that stuff is very relevant, especially in 2014 when the movie came out. It's still relevant, but I just feel like they chose some very good themes to come within a movie that has political and whatever geopolitical themes to it.
yeah, it does feel very real world, and it's on a much higher scale, obviously. But no, I get you. I think that's why it works. So the next scene is really awesome because I'm not the guy that wrote this, but if I was, I don't know if I would have had enough common sense to put this in. But there's a Captain America exhibit at the Smithsonian, which is all kinds of perfect and all kinds of lovely. It's great. Like, of course there is. How could there not be a Captain America exhibit at the Smithsonian? If this were real, they'd be celebrating this guy. The Avengers are public characters. They're public people, public figures. Yes, they're going to celebrate this. I love that this is in here. It plays into the believability of the character, and the place is packed. Not for nothing. It's packed with tourists checking out the exhibits. And the funny bit is he's in there, he's in a hat, it's pulled down low. A kid wearing his shield tee sees him and he's staring a hole through him. And Steve smiles and puts the finger up to his lips. In other words, quiet, don't say anything. The kid just gives him that blank nod. It's great. We hear a narrator talking about Bucky being the only Howling Commando to lose his life defending his country. And then we get to see the interview with Peggy. She talks about Cap saving 1,000 men, including her future husband, now Phil. Here comes the moment a whole bunch of people have been losing their mind over since Endgame. That moment in this film, how do you piece this together with the fact that Steve went back in time? Can you just explain it all the way by saying, well, he created a different timeline, but in this timeline that we see in this film, she did marry someone besides Steve. Is that the easiest explanation?
Yeah, it's an alternate timeline. That's
Yeah.
the easiest explanation. Or you can say that her story in that clip was a lie. I don't know.
Ah.
But I think an alternate timeline is perfect explanation.
Yeah.
The thing that I like about the Smithsonian scene is it was a very smart way for them to do exposition and re-explain
Ooh.
the Bucky relationship and re-explain all of this stuff before we see him again in the movie. I thought that was very smart of them. Now, of course, I'm sitting there the whole time because I read the book, so I'm like, I know Bucky's Winter Soldier, but um, the way that they paced that reveal was really good.
Yeah. I remember seeing this film in theaters, and when he takes the mask off and stands up for the first time and Steve sees him, there was an audible gasp in the theater. Whole bunch of people had no idea it was Bucky. And I'm like, I'm smiling going, I love this stuff so much that people are so invested in this that they're shocked. Like, oh, that's great. Um, you're right. It does provide context. And without this scene, Phil, you had to tell the story of Bucky in flashbacks, right? That's the only way you can do it.
Right.
Yeah. So the next scene is gut wrenching, to say the least. He is visiting with Peggy. Haley Atwell is back as Peggy Carter, and she is in a home. It looks to be she's in a home, and she is having this conversation with him. Seeing them together again is great. It's weird, but it's great. He's telling her that he thought he could just throw himself back in as a soldier, take orders, and serve, but it's just not the same. She helped found Shield, and that's why he joined up in the first place, or that's why he kept going with it. And she's trying to give him a pep talk, and then she's choked up, and he goes to, I think, to get her a drink of water, I think is what it is. And suddenly she turns around and she sees him and says, "Steve, you're alive. You came back. It's been so long." He says, "I couldn't leave my best girl, not when she owes me a dance." That ties directly in to the end of the first Avenger. And this is the last time we see Peggy in this particular timeline, because this is the last moment we see her, period. Um, dude, that's a gut wrenching and sad moment. And when he tells her he couldn't leave his best girl behind, Evans ends that moment with not a smile, but a look of, I'm losing her. She's going to be gone soon. And it's just that look of missed opportunities. And maybe if you really want to get anal about it, you could say, well, this is the moment where he's like, you know what? If I could go back in time, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
what do you think about this scene between these two?
Um, I found some of the aging in this scene a little distracting, and I was surprised
Really?
because I didn't remember it looking like that when I saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
But watching it at home, I was like, oh, you can definitely tell like this is like CG or some of the CG on her face. But um, yeah, the part about the scene that always gets me is that it is very sad, but man, Chris Evans is a great actor.
Mm-hmm.
Because when she turns around and she recognizes him for the first time, and let me tell you, I have experienced stuff with people with Alzheimer's or dementia, and it's very hard to deal with it because you are only used to the person the person that you knew that had all of their
Mm-hmm.
faculties. Um, and so when she first turns around and says, "Steve, you're back," and the way he chokes up for like a brief second and immediately composes himself, it's so good. Like you could almost see him getting ready to cry, and then just like immediately like fixing his face and going, "No, no, no, I'm here. I'm here for my best girl," and it's just so heartbreaking.
Yeah, very nuanced moment for sure. And like you said, Evans is killing it in this performance. He always kills it, but yeah, he's um, God, it's so good, man. I just can't get over how good this is. And as someone who is a fan of Atwell's character here and of Atwell, period, I really wanted to see these two continue. Um, and we wouldn't see that again until much, much later. But yeah, great moment here. Again, sad, gut wrenching. But yeah, I think it's a moment that kind of had to happen because it sets things up for later. Um, we go back to the Triskelion here from this, and Fury is trying to open files, and the computer is telling him that access is denied. Hint number two, Phil, that something's off. And when the world's most important spy doesn't know, then that's pretty bad. This told me no matter what happens from here on out, I don't know if Fury is guilty of anything that we might think he's guilty of because he is visibly trying to get access and being told you can't have access. And he says, "Who authorized it?" Nicholas J. Fury. He's like, "Okay." And that's when he decides to go to the World Security Council, having a meeting with Pierce at the time. And they're talking to him about the boat hijacking. He's not concerned about the Lemurian star. Obviously, he's not, because he's behind it to begin with. Um, Fury meets with him and tells him to delay the InSight launch. Fury thinks something big is up. Pierce reluctantly agrees, but he says with the caveat, "I want Iron Man to stop by my niece's birthday party, and not just to fly by. He has to mingle." So at this moment in time, Phil, Pierce seems like a good guy. I mean, for all we know, he's a good guy. And he and Fury obviously have a past. They have a history. They're friends, not just work colleagues. But it's still very gray right now. We don't really know what's happening or what's going to happen. Right now, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. They both seem like they don't have a whole lot of blood on their hands. I think they're playing it straight the way they need to. So far, we don't know much of anything. You know what I mean?
Um, yeah, all this stuff is really good because I think it sets up like we have reasons to not trust Fury early in the movie,
Yeah.
um, and I feel like this shit sets up stuff like, okay, well, is it the other way around? Is it somebody else that's a mole that we haven't seen yet? Um, yeah, I just think all the double agent stuff they do here is really good.
Yeah. And then, like I said, they keep you guessing. And like you said, for all we know, there's a third person in this triangle. And I don't, dude, I kind of thought there was someone else on the way. I, I'm not gonna say I didn't think this guy was going to be a heel, but at the time they did a good job of trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Um, Steve shows up at the VA. He took Sam up on his offer to show up sometime. Sam's leading a group session. After the group session, he greets Steve by calling him the Running Man, which is awesome.
Hmm.
He talks to Steve about the loss of his wingman, and he doesn't say the word pilot in his defense, but he leads you to believe that's what he was, his wingman, right? And he's planting seeds of what's going to happen later. Steve is thinking about quitting. And then we go from that scene to Fury. And man, this is one of those moments in the film when everything starts to become clear. Nick Fury, for all the bad stuff he's done, is probably not the one behind any of this crap, because Shield's basically trying to kill him here. And man, this scene in the SUV is such good stuff. Sam Jackson is insanely good at what he does. And yes, I'm gushing because I think he deserves it. He's so great. The action in this is awesome. They bring out to ram the door, and the car's talking to him and telling him, this is down this percentage, and Nick's trying to launch the car. He's talking about like this thing's gonna sprout wings, Phil, and take off. And I really wanted to see it, but it didn't happen. And Fury asks, "What isn't damaged?" The car says, "The air conditioning is fully operational," which is great. Dude, talk to me about this scene. This has got to be one of the key notes, key moments of the film in terms of this is a pivotal moment. This is going to mean something big is getting ready to happen. This is action packed. I mean, do you think this is as good as when Cap lands on the Lemurian star in terms of action and tone? I mean, it holds its own, doesn't it? It's another great moment of the film for sure.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff. I think that when he first of all when he goes to meet Sam at the wherever he's at and when he's doing the counseling in there, again, that's why I tell people rewatch Winter Soldier. Everything is there because we see Steve doing the counseling in Endgame, and
Yeah.
of course we get to see in Endgame a lot of stuff that he really learned from Sam. Um, and yeah, it just like there's so many things they set up about their relationship in this movie that pay off later. But the chase scene, I remember before the movie came out when they were doing the promotional stuff. This is the scene they were showing. Like I feel like they showed it on a talk show or something, and that was a clip that made its way around the internet before the movie actually released. And so this was like the first thing that got us into the movie.
Hmm.
man, it's so good. I mean, I feel like um, if anybody had a complaint about Nick Fury in a role, and we only see him show up in brief cameos, we never actually see him do anything cool as Nick Fury. This is probably blows that out of the water. Like this is the coolest thing we've seen him do up to that point. Um, like he's in full command of the situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you get the feeling of why they would send so many people to try to kill this man. Like um, when the first police car pulls up and he's in the car and he looks out the window and he goes, "You want to see my lease?" Like I think that's just a great line. um, I mean, and just throwing a nod in there to profiling is just fantastic, and just how they did it was great. Um, and then like when we see how many people are trying to kill him, like when he escapes all of this stuff, like we really get an idea of why he is director of Shield and why you would essentially need to send an army to get rid of this guy. Um, um, but man, they do this more than once in this movie where they play with depth of field, where they'll show like somebody in front of the camera that's very clear, and then they'll have like the figure or silhouette of somebody else very distorted. And so when the car is flipped over, the first time we see Winter Soldier, and we can see him through the windshield, but they do this really cool depth of field shot with him, and it's one of the coolest shots of the movie in my opinion.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. Uh, I love those different perspectives, man. Like literal different perspectives. That's good stuff. Yeah, to your point about him being in command, even when the movie happened for the first time, I saw it for the first time in theater. I'm thinking he's not. He's going to be fine. He'll get out of it. Like I didn't even feel like, oh, they got him. Dude, this could be it. But like, nah, he. When he escapes, you're like, yeah, of course he escapes because he's Nick Fury. Like, kind of when they get Steve in the elevator later. Yeah, you didn't send enough guys. Like, what were you thinking? Should have sent 3 times as many.
Yeah, this is the first time we see the somebody carving a hole in the bottom of a car to escape, and that becomes like a Marvel trope where we see it in a lot of other movies.
Oh my God, we have had. We saw it twice in this movie.
Yeah, we see it in other movies. We've seen it in Agent of Shield, the TV show. Yeah,
Oh, that's right.
it becomes like a Marvel trope.
Yeah, that's yeah, it does actually. Yeah, man, that's a powerful laser. That's all I can tell you. That's insanely powerful laser in the palm of your hand. That's a lightsaber right there, just like a mini saber. Yeah, that's yeah. You're speaking about him. We got to get him in the movie. He's here. Winter Soldier has arrived. Holy Lord, this is really good stuff. Um, yeah, if you're a fan, you know what's going down here. This is of course Bucky, and we see Winter Soldier for the first time, and man, he is relentless. He is standing right in front of the SUV, and then when that thing flips, he just sidesteps. He's not even panicking. He's just complete control of everything. And yeah, Fury gets out, but he's bearing the scars of this for sure. Steve comes home and we see his neighbor for the first time. It's Sharon Carter, kids, Peggy's great niece. We don't know that at the time. We'll find out later. He tells her that she's welcome to use his machine because she's doing laundry. And she goes, "What will it cost?" And he says, "It costs a cup of coffee." She turns him down, though she very clearly into him, and says, "I think you may have left your TV or radio on." Steve hears music and he goes in and he knows something's up. So instead of just walking through the front door, he goes in, I guess, outside and goes in through the window, which is, that's a soldier's way of doing things. And of course, he's the greatest soldier ever. He knows how to get into his own apartment here. Nick is there bleeding out on his chair. He says, "I don't remember giving you a key." And he says, "You really think I'd need one?" And then he tells him, "My wife kicked me out." And Steve says, "Didn't know you were married." And dude, for a split second, when I first saw this film, I thought, they're going to give Nick a life. This is different. And yeah, and when it happened, I thought two things. One, I thought, well, they're giving Nick a life. Then I thought, he's lying to him. Like, because I knew you get from the jump, this is a spy film and cloak and dagger espionage stuff. So I kind of didn't believe anything at all. And I didn't think he was the villain, but then I thought, why is he lying to him about having a wife? I just was so into it. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't second guessing anything I was hearing. But then, of course, he shows Steve his phone. It says ears are everywhere. Shield has been compromised. Steve says, who else knows about your wife? And Nick's phone says, you and me. And then a shot rings out through the window. Fury is down. He hands Steve something. He says, don't trust anyone. He hands him a flash drive, we come to find out. Sharon kicks in the door, announces herself as Agent 13 under Fury's orders. Steve jumps into the next building. Dude, that jump from his building into the next building is freaking awesome. Oh, just a simple stunt can still get me excited. But he jumps into that building. He chases the gunman who's extraordinarily fast. And dude, when Cap is bumping into the wall and like putting holes in the plaster and then shotguns through those double doors as if they're not there, like, dude, this guy is a freaking, he'd cripple any defensive line that got in his way. This is, I think, is a small little example. In case you didn't know, this is the Man of Steel right here. Like this is crazy good stuff, man.
Yeah, I remember watching this, and it's not just how he blasted through like the door, like you said, smashing into the walls and leaving the craters in the wall. Um, and I just remember just like the way people gasped when he first bust through that window. Like it's exactly what you would think in a comic, like of somebody busting through a window or busting through a door.
Yeah.
Um, but man, the other thing that took me back by both the scene on the in the middle of the street and this is just how scary they make Winter Soldier. Like he's cold, he's calculating, and it's just like every time he's on screen, like you feel like he could kill anybody that's on screen with him. Like if he really wanted to, he could kill anybody that's on screen with him. And there are a few times there where it almost takes you out of what you think you know about the universe now. Like looking back on it, it's like, oh, there's no way they're going to kill this character because that character had to be here for the next this movie or next Avengers movie. But there were several scenes where he popped on screen and I'd fear for their life because he was just that scary. And like when the way he took out the SUV after a whole army tried to take it down, and he just took down the SUV with one shot by himself. I'm like, this guy's that's crazy. So him him outrunning Steve and then just turning around and catching the shield with one hand like it was nothing is just like what?
That's great stuff. And like you said, all those guys try to take out Fury's SUV as they're laying there bleeding, and they witness all this. They're like, "Dude, you couldn't have just sent that guy. I could have been home today." You know what I mean? Like, just call him in first. Yeah. I don't know. What about him catching the shield on that rooftop, man? That is some crazy good stuff.
Yeah, just turns around and catches it with just one hand. Like it's still like I still pop for it every time I see it, and then just throws it back at him in like almost the same motion, and then just keeps running. It's he is. Yeah, Winter Soldier is probably one of the best villains we've seen because he's like I said, he's just legitimately terrifying.
Yeah. And it's funny because later when he's asking who the guy was, it's almost like they didn't brief him on who Captain America is. I guess with good reason. But they
Yeah,
didn't bother telling him there's a super soldier out there. You need to be careful.
yeah.
So,
They just give him the mission. He goes out.
yeah.
um, yeah, just yeah. He there. I think just the way that he is just so cold. He doesn't emote. He doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't ever look like he's ever out of his element. He doesn't panic. Like he's. I mean, just like a just calculating killer.
And I love that Marvel, as we said before in the intro, kids, Marvel gets the right people. It's a tired old cliche I've used many times on this show, but I stick with it. Sebastian Stan was just a really, really nice looking dude in the first Avenger who was charming and suave and everything. And it's like, yeah, you just wait. Just wait. I know what's coming. I can't talk about it, but I know what's coming. Just wait and see. And they stick with the actor, and they don't change. They don't change any cast changes or anything. They stick with him. It's the same guy here. It's the same guy later. It's the same guy down there. It's the same guy on Disney Plus. Oh, I love continuity, man. It doesn't have to be there for me to love it, but when it's there and I love it this much, I can't help it. So I'm glad that everything has worked out with Stan and that he's still on board. Um, he catches the shield. He's gone after that. And then we get to the hospital scene where Fury is undergoing surgery. Steve is telling her about the shooter, that he had a metal arm. She instantly knows who it is. And it says 3 slugs, and she says untraceable, Soviet made. Natasha already knew it. Fury has gained the paddles, and they are calling time of death. Now, Phil, did you believe at the time Nick Fury is really dead?
Yes, at the time I thought he was dead.
Same here.
And I had completely bought in. And again, that's just how well this movie not only sells the same tone of spy movies, but it just felt like several times in this movie that anything could happen. And that's why I said, like, it took you out of, looking at this as just like a part of a franchise. It was just like I was completely invested of, oh, this person could die or that person could die. I felt like anybody could go.
Yeah. You know, we've had glimpses of this in other Marvel properties. I mean, I didn't think Wilson Fisk was going to kill Ben Urich in the Daredevil show. I didn't see that coming. So there's precedent there for that happening, for them to just suddenly pull something and you're like, wait, they're going to kill him?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I kind of thought this was it.
they killed Coulson straight out the gate. I don't think any of us
Right.
expected Coulson to die.
Right. Good pull for sure. Um, so they're having a conversation. Natasha's ready to go after the killer. You can tell she's standing over what we believe to be Fury's dead body, and the way she's looking to this guy, man, she's looking at him like, in my head, I'm thinking father figure, mentor. He saved my life. He gave me a second chance. He believed in me when nobody else did. I mean, that's without saying anything. That's what I'm getting from her. And when she storms out, it's obvious she's going to go after him. She turns around and says, "Why was Fury in your apartment?" And he plays it dumb. Like says, "I don't know." And then Rumlow comes up, says, "They want you back at Shield. They want you now." And she looks at Steve, says, "You're a terrible liar." We see Steve looking at this vending machine. Guy's filling a vending machine, and we don't think anything about it until later. We go back to the Triskelion with Steve. He meets Sharon on the way to Pierce. She says, "Captain Rogers." He says, "Neighbor." Great little exchange. This is where Pierce is at his best, because Pierce, look up the words cloak and dagger. Robert Redford's going to be there as an actor because, wow, this is really good stuff. He is essentially, Phil, still making me believe that he's in the clear. He's a good guy because the way he's talking to him, and dude, he is really making out to believe, look, I'm on your side. We want the same thing. I'm as shocked by this as you are. I mean, dude, excellent moment here between these two guys.
Tom Clark 6M Podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you.
Pierce tells the story of rebels taking hostages at this embassy in Bogota. Security got him out. Fury was the deputy chief of the SHIELD station there. He came up with an order to storm the building through the sewers. Pierce told him no, that they would negotiate, but the rebels wouldn't negotiate. So when they went in to kill the hostages were gone. Fury had taken them, saved them, including Pierce's daughter. And he said, "I've never had a reason to not trust him." Dude, it's really good stuff. And he flat out, just like Natasha did, "Why was Fury in your apartment?" He says, "I don't know." And he says, "Did you know that the place was bugged?" He says, "Fury told me so." Pierce says, did you know that Fury is probably one that bugged it?" So he, while he's trying to get on Steve's good side, is also planting the seed here, Phil, that, hey, Nick's not the guy you think he is. At this point, are you crazy suspicious of Pierce, or do you think maybe he's just calling it right down the middle?
I think this is a great scene because we've already set up the precedent that Fury has lied to Steve so many times. So even if Nick did not do what Redford's character is accusing him of, you just don't know, because this is a guy that deals in being dishonest. Like you just never know. Um, and so I think Redford in this scene is exactly like what Steve is afraid of about Shield. Like you don't know where anybody stands. Like I think he's so uneasy with everybody there because it just feels like everybody lies to everybody.
Yeah. God, the whole movie's like that too. Pierce shows him a live video of Batroc being interrogated. Said he was paid by a wire transfer through various phony accounts, and all of them led back to an address that's like 2 numbers off from the address that Nick Fury's mom's had, apparently as a kid. The prevailing theory here is that Fury was selling intelligence and the deal went south, and that's why he was killed. Pierce says he took a seat on the council because Nick wanted him to. He and Fury both knew that to build a better world, they had to tear the old one down. He implies at the end that he and Steve are similar. He says, I'm going to ask you again, why was Fury there? Steve says Fury told him not to trust anyone. Pierce says, I wonder if that includes Fury. Steve says, sorry, those were his last words. And then when he goes to leave, he warns Steve he's going to find out who killed his friend. He's not going to let anyone stand in his way. And he says, understood. And this leads to another, in my opinion, this is the third big moment of the film in terms of this moment's going to mean something and this is something big happening. This is the elevator scene. Something that we almost got part 2 of in Endgame, but it was perfect the way he handled it in Endgame. But this is really good stuff here, man. Rumlow and his guys, his strike guys enter, and Steve notices out of the corner of his eye, one of them is holding his hand on his weapon that's strapped to his leg, and then tries to look away. The elevator's filling up. There's like 20 guys in this elevator, and he sees one of the guys sweating. Rumlow tells him, I'm sorry about what happened with Fury. It's messed up what happened to him. Steve says, thank you. And then when he sees the guys sweating and more guys get on, he's figured out what's going on. And dude, this line is amazing. Before we get started, does anyone want to get out? Man, talk to me about this freaking fight scene. How this is as impressive, I think, and I'll reference Daredevil again, the hallway scene in Daredevil and the hallway scene in The Punisher when he's in prison.
Yeah.
This to me is kind of the precursor to both those moments.
Yeah, I feel like there are several like really big moments in this movie, whether it's the car chase scene, the beginning on the boat, and I feel like this is another one that just makes this movie so memorable because it's just so good. Just the entire choreography for this fight in this very small space, and it's totally believable. Like I never feel like that I don't feel like that Steve is gonna lose this fight, but just the fact that he's overwhelmed in a way, and the way that they try to beat him is so practical with the cuffs, and it's just so great. Rumlow being Rumlow and being slimy is great. It's just a good scene.
Yeah, it's so good. All these muscled up dudes in suits. Yeah, sure. These guys are field agents. Sure. Okay. Yeah, it's good stuff. Great scene, like you said. It sets the tone for what's going to come because now he is a fugitive. Captain America, a freaking fugitive, man.
And man, I know that we just talked about how great the elevator scene is, but it just goes into another great scene where he takes down a whole jet by itself.
Oh my God. I mean, let's see Batman do that. Batman can kill Superman, sure. I mean, Cap takes down a plane. No freaking lasers, no heat vision, no, cold icy breath. This guy just on his own. Dude, insane, man. Doesn't he throw the shield into one of the fans that's spinning on top, I think, and then pulls the shield out of it? Good Lord.
Yeah, he throws the shield in the fan first, and then he comes out and pulls the shield out, and then he takes out the back propellers with the shield, and then he just jumps off as it starts to crash.
Yeah. And dude, he's a soldier. We talked about this in the first Avenger. Cap kills people. They're not advertising it, but you know that Captain America has killed people. He's a soldier. He fought in the war. He kills people now. Dude, you can't tell me the guys on the elevator are all still alive, or at least not paralyzed for life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think in this scene, it's the same thing that we were talking about on the boat. How there was no wasted movement. It was
Yeah.
never him like taking a guess to go, how am I going to take down this jet? It's like he just took like 3 or 4 hits at this thing and it went down.
Right. Oh, it's almost like he's counting, oh, third time. Nope, fourth time. Here we go. Yeah. And plus I love the bit, the last bit of the elevator scene is when Rumlow tells him it's not personal. He says it kind of feels personal. And then he's looking down at the mayhem he's caused and he stomps on the shield and it flips up onto his arm like Darby Allin with the skateboard or something. That is such good stuff, man. Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah, I mean, we've seen him flip up the shield like that several times. It's just so cool. I mean, again,
Yeah.
it's become like a trope because we've seen him do it, and then of course we saw Taskmaster do it.
Yep.
Um,
I forgot about that.
yeah, it's just yeah.
Yeah, so now he's a fugitive. Jasper Sitwell is the guy sort of firing up the troops. He's putting everyone on full alert, and he's basically selling Captain America as a fugitive. He's trying to sell it to all of them. Sharon says, if Shield is conducting a manhunt on Captain America, we deserve to know why. Pierce says because he has info. Pierce says because he has info on Fury's murder and won't share it. He's now a fugitive. Now, you're going to be surprised at this. Even in this moment, I wasn't exactly on Pierce's side, but I kind of thought if Pierce is not dirty, if he's not, I can kind of see where he's coming from. He knows Steve's lying to him. For all he knows, Nick told him, I did something bad, Steve. I'm sorry. Don't tell anybody. But Steve's not going to tell Pierce. So, no, I can't say I was totally on his side, but I kind of thought, I can kind of see where he's coming from. Like, I think they played it really well here. They still haven't told you Pierce is a bad guy. But, dude, it kind of feels like, what other choice does Pierce have? He just lets Steve leave the building of his own accord? Like, you can't do that, right? I love how they're playing this close to the vest, even still at this point in the film.
Yeah, I got the feeling at this point. Well, I mean, from the very beginning of the movie, you know there's going to be a falling out with him and Shield. Like from
Sure.
the second he goes down there in the elevator and sees the other helicarriers that this is a relationship that is not going to work. um, he is just he's too altruistic. He's too, as Peggy said in their scene, he's too dramatic. He's just not going to. He's not going to stay in line. Um, and that's both because he's gotten so clouded on what is doing the right thing anymore, because he sees so many people in his organization that are telling him they're doing the right thing or doing things for the better good, but it doesn't seem like they're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
Because
he's not a good fit with Shield, dude, because everyone's lying to him.
exactly, and he's not a good liar. That's not how he moves. He's not a spy. Which again, if we want to go and put the connections between him and Sam later in the movie, when Nick invites him, he goes, "I'm a soldier. I'm not a spy."
Yeah, good call. Yeah. This was not. This is a square peg in a round hole for sure. With Steve being a part of Shield. Um, he goes back to the hospital to get the flash drive, but it's gone. Natasha's in behind him in the reflection of the vending machine. She's chewing gum, which tells him that she has it. Of course, he's grilling her, wanting to know what's going on. Um, she doesn't trust him. He doesn't trust her. And dude, in this moment, I already was feeling like Natasha was up to no good. But dude, the way she interacted with him, I thought she might have turned. This could be. I just wasn't buying it. I wasn't buying that she didn't know. And I thought of all the people that wouldn't know, she's not one of them. She has to know something. Like they're so physically close together, face to face, almost cheek to cheek in this scene. It part of my notes says, why haven't these two hooked up? But at the same time, you got all this tension between them that's not sexual tension at all. It's like differences of opinion, difference of worldviews, difference of how to handle yourself. I mean, what are you buying here from Natasha? Do you believe her when she says that she doesn't know? or do you think she knows more than what she's letting on?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're still um, testing the waters of who are her allegiances to. We still don't quite know,
Yeah.
um, and that's partially because we just don't know that much about Black Widow as a character yet. Um, but it just also is just how well they paced this movie. I don't think that it works as well if you don't have some of the things coming into this movie, and then just this is just it's espionage. Like they just handle the tone of this so well.
Yeah. And the next scene, talking about Pierce being believable, the next scene is Pierce. He's defending Fury to the World Council. He's defending him, and as if he's a good guy. And he's still coming off like a babyface here. Redford is amazing. He's very convincing. This is not just an actor reading dialogue. This legit feels like this guy was my best friend. I didn't want him dead. I want to know what's going on. I'm not going to let you trash him now that he's gone. It means something to me that he's not here. Like, crap, man. Like, maybe I just like Redford so much I wanted to still believe he was a good guy here, but I can't say enough good things about how well this movie's written, because at this point I still don't know what the heck's going on. The council wants to reinstate Project Insight. They want to fire it back up and get this thing actually moving. We get the cute scene of Steve and Natasha in the mall. They plug in the flash drive in an Apple store, and she warns them we have about around 9 minutes. They'll know when it's online. A tech comes up and tries to help, and she lies and says we're getting married, looking for honeymoon spots, and he sees Jersey on the screen. And the tech looks close at Steve and says, I have the exact same glasses. And because you thought he recognized him, he goes, if you need anything, I've been Aaron. And he holds his name tag out. I think he showed up. Didn't that actor show up later in like a commercial or something to that effect in the MCU somewhere?
He was in something else. I just can't remember what.
Yeah, I can't remember. It was a good fun little moment. You could throw away moment, but it was fun nonetheless. Strike is there, kids. They're looking for him. Rumlow's there leading the charge. She tells Steve to kiss her. Public displays of affection make people uncomfortable. Rumlow looks right past them like a stormtrooper, like right past them. Doesn't even notice. Like he gives a half second of looking like, ugh, what the heck's that crap? You know what I mean? Like some macho guy. So it totally worked. Steve and Natasha are driving to Jersey, and she's asking him, was that your first kiss since 1945? He says, no, I'm 95. I'm not dead, which is awesome. They have a nice little exchange in the car. To me, it still looks like they should be together. I can't get that out of my head as I saw this movie. They're having this conversation. She says at one point, who do you want me to be? He says, how about a friend? She says, you might be in the wrong business for that, Things go full circle for Cap here because they end up back at the camp where he trained in. And we see a flashback of the drill sergeant. We see a young Steve Rogers. We see a building that doesn't belong there. They bust the lock and go right in. And they end up going downstairs. They find a hidden elevator. They see pictures of Howard Stark, Peggy Carter, and Colonel Phillips. Throwbacks to the first Avenger, which is really, really good stuff. They see a room full of computers. There's a flash drive hub that looks very recent and very current. So they plug in. Who put the hub there, I wonder? Like, I don't know the answer to that. Somebody recently, right?
It had to be somebody recently, but I don't know.
Good question. Computers come to life. It's Arnim Zola. He uploaded his consciousness into a computer in 1972. He reveals Hydra is not dead. He tells him Hydra has been growing inside S.H.I.E.L.D. When history didn't cooperate, history was changed. And I will ask you this before we go any further. Is this one of those comic book science moments where you're like, screw it, I'll just go along with it? Or was this for you, oh man, that's not bad, I like that? How'd this register with you?
I don't know. I'm such a fan of Zola as a character, so it didn't bother me. I could see how it would take other people out if they were looking at it like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. But I'm a comic fan, so I just didn't even bat an eye at it.
Right. It's very, very comic booky for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely comic book science.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean the stuff in the mall and all the stuff in the car with Nat. Uh, I think that's another reason why this movie is so good, um, because there are a lot of parallels between this movie and the first movie. And the first movie is it's a very Disney version of what you would expect Captain America to be. Like it had like all of the romance stuff in there. It had all of the, 60s like sensibilities. Like well not 60s sensibilities, but the dated sensibilities to it. And I feel like
Mm.
this was just like, oh no, this isn't Cap, in his time where everything makes sense and it would make sense for him to, find love and all these other things. No, he's in a time where nothing makes sense now. And that's the theme of the
Mm.
movie.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, there are moments here that directly relate back to First Avenger. Dude, we talk sometimes about, well, you don't necessarily need to have seen every single Marvel film to enjoy a single Marvel film. But at the same time, if you haven't seen First Avenger, you're winning this cold. I mean, you'd be fairly lost, wouldn't you? Do you think they do enough flashbacks to get you up to speed, or do you think you'd have to see the first one first?
I actually think this movie stands alone pretty well. I just
Yeah.
think that um I feel like the juxtaposition between the first and second movie are a part of the theme of this movie. And I feel like it kind of enhances the first movie in some ways. I think if you watch both, you can understand stuff like the Peggy stuff hits harder. I think the stuff with Bucky also hits harder. Um and I think
Mm.
you kind of empathize with his confusion with where the world is now.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I love the way you put that. That it was you can empathize, and it's like you're not invested in Bucky without seeing the first Avenger, right? You don't really have that gut reaction when you see him as the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a bunch of things. I think it's just his confusion about doing the right thing because he got into this to do the right thing, and we see somebody that worked so hard to join the army, and now he's in this time where he got everything he wanted. Really, he joined up. He they won the war. He's a super soldier, and now he's kind of questioning his role in everything.
yeah, man out of time. This movie is very much a man out of time, for sure. Um, Yeah, so we got the mall scene. We go and we know Arnim Zola is still a thing. He basically says that Hydra has been running the show for years. They've infiltrated. The whole idea of the Red Skull taking armies and marching across America didn't pan out. People fought back. It was just too much. So they decided to go another route, and it's the same explanation they gave in Shang Chi, same explanation they gave in the Dark Knight or in Batman Begins. This idea of there's this terrorist organization that they were doing everything hand to hand, but now they've learned, oh no, we can topple governments by just being in the background and by doing things under the cover of darkness and pulling strings politically and infiltrating with spies. I mean, that's become a trope for me. And I don't hate it, but man, it's been used way too much at this point for me. But it does fit here. And you can't exactly have a bunch of dudes running around with green suits with big yellow H's on their chest in the MCU. It's just not going to fly. It's going to look ridiculous. And those guys are a dime a dozen. You just punch them in the mouth and then lock them up. But you can't lock these guys up because they are everywhere and they are the people that you least expect. It's kind of like Skrulls, you know what I mean? Like they've infiltrated everything.
Yeah.
What do you think about that explanation, by the way, that they've infiltrated Shield and that they're in charge of everything now?
Well, I mean, I think it is a perfect follow up again to the first movie. If if America comes up with the perfect soldier that can go in with a shield and beat down countless Hydra agents, how do you fight that? Well, you don't fight
Yeah,
them at all. Like if now, like the war is digital and the war is espionage. Like he can't just run in and punch that, and that's a big part of Cap's confusion in this movie. It's like he can't solve things by just punching it. Like even Winter
right.
Soldier, he cannot win that fight by just punching him.
I go back to the Jason Statham comparison from earlier. Not that I'm comparing Evans to Statham, because man, is there a big difference there. Uh, Acting ability, first and foremost. No offense to Jason Statham. I'm just saying. I like the Transporter. The first Transporter is an excellent film,
Yeah, it
kids.
is.
I vouch for it. But it's kind of like when he's making that crazy shark movie. I'm like, if Jason Statham doesn't somehow roundhouse kick this shark in the face underwater, I'm not going to watch the movie. Like, I'm here for it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like Captain America's gig is, hey, I got to punch people. That's kind of what I throw my shield and I punch people and I'll shoot them if I have to. But then, like you said, the enemy is someone else. The enemy is, well, we don't know who it is, and you can't just punch them all. Yeah, dude, it's very a word I wish I'd mentioned from the jump. Cerebral. This movie, very cerebral, man. I missed my cue an hour ago. That's good stuff. So yeah, we get the admissions here by Zola that Hydra's running everything. He mentions for the first time the algorithm. Says that he's written an algorithm, and yeah, it's that's what's on the flash drive. And a missile is sent on the way to the base, and it's fired by Shield. Zola knew, and he was stalling them. Okay, so Steve and Natasha go into the floor to shield themselves from the blast. They come out from underneath the rubble. The base is destroyed. Shield agents, strike agents are there. Rumlow is with them, looking for Steve and Nat, but they're gone. Rumlow says, call in the asset, which is spy speak for get that dude with the metal arm, which is perfect. I love it. We see Pierce at home. The Winter Soldier is just at his table. And it's so great. The maid is leaving. She doesn't see him there. It's important, kids. Pierce says, you want some milk? Which is great. He tells him the timetable is moved. The window is limited. 2 targets, level 6. He says, I want confirmed death in 10 hours. The maid has come back. She forgot her phone. And Redford's like, oh, I wish he would have knocked. And then he shoots her like 3 times.
Yeah, he just kills her. Like doesn't even think about it. He's like, God, oh wow.
Man, you know how hard it was to find good help, and now I got to kill her.
Yeah, yeah, all of the Steve stuff with Zola is just so good because it's like all this time you're thinking like, oh well, we beat them, and it's like, well, nope, we've outsmarted you because we've just infiltrated your defense apparatus. And this is one of the few things in the movie that absolutely shocked me because they took a plot line from Jonathan Hickman's Secret Warriors book, and I read that book, so I knew of the whole Hydra being undercover in Shield, but I didn't think that they would use it in the movies, especially not this soon. And so I was completely surprised by it, and I was just like that more excited that they used something, and I feel like it was a fairly recent comic at the time when the movie came out.
Yeah, dude, that's a good pull. I'm like you. I feel like maybe it is too soon, but at the same time, it's a Captain America story. You don't do this in Iron Man. You don't do this in Thor. This is a Captain America story. Hydra is Captain America villain. So, yeah, I get that. It does feel too soon, but it works, right?
Yeah, I also just feel like it was a great way to update Hydra. You weren't gonna have like him beating down like tons of Hydra henchmen like he did in the first movie because it would have gotten kind of predictable. Like we see in the first 10 minutes of the movie that if that's your gamble, then you're gonna lose. Like he's just too good. Like he was designed to be the best soldier in the world. You can't beat him in that way. So to take the fight to a different battlefield, like that's the way to try to beat him.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's really, really good stuff. So yeah, he kills the maid, and it's again hard. Good help's hard to find here. So Steve and Natasha go where the only place they can go is to Sam's, and she tells Steve when they go in to get cleaned up. She tells Steve that she joined Shield and thought she was going straight, but she traded in the KGB for Hydra, and she says, "I owe you." She says, if it was the other way around, if it was down to me to save your life, would you trust me to do it? He says, I would now. So we know a few things here, Phil. We know that Natasha's probably not bad. Steve's probably never going to be bad, which is good. Steve's not Hydra. Anyone that says otherwise, shut up, because you're dead wrong. Ridiculous. And on top of all that, freaking Pierce is bad after all. Darn it. But yeah, once he knows who Winter Soldier is and he's offering a glass of milk to an assassin, it's a bad guy. So Sam wants to help. Steve says, I can't ask you to do it. This is where he comes to find out, well, I thought you were a pilot. He said, I never said I was a pilot, because he shows him the file on the wings. And he says, I can't ask you to help. And he says, dude, Captain America wants my help. I can't think of a better reason to get back in. We get a great scene here with the previously aforementioned Senator Stern, portrayed by the brilliant Gary Shandling, who is great. He's talking about this girl that he's hooked up with, who's much younger than him, and his hamstrings have an issue, his leg, And it's funny because he gets into Sitwell's ear and he whispers, "Hail Hydra." And then he immediately goes back to the shtick of complaining about his leg and this girl who's killing him. Like, it's very funny. Like, this is the same senator that was going after Tony Stark and Iron Man. But yeah, dude, it's awesome stuff. I love it. He gets a phone call. He gets that phone call from Pearson. It's Sam. Dude, talk about this moment in this film, man. How great Shandling is here.
Yeah, him whispering "Hail Hydra" it's so great. It's just so good. And just him trying to stay in character, like people are watching him.
Right.
It immediately reminds me of Casino, when Nikki comes out and he's talking to he's talking to the other guy. I keep wanting to call him Billy Bats. That's not his name in that movie, but it's the same actor. But so he's talking to him, and somebody's walking by, and he's like trying to cover his mouth while he's talking to him. And he's like, "Wait a minute, who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Oh, he's nobody." And so it does immediately what it reminds me of sometimes when I see it. But he just does it in such a goofy, hammy way. It's just so funny. Man, the other thing that I forgot how funny it was this time when I watched it is when Steve and Nat are in the room having a conversation, and Sam just kind of peeks in the door and goes, "Hey, I made breakfast. You guys eat that kind of thing." And walks out. He is great he'll come in and have like a one-liner, and it's just so subtle and in the moment, like like in Civil War where they're in the backseat of that car and he's just sitting there and he's like, "So, you like cats, huh?"
And dude, they establish. I'm gonna jump ahead to Civil War here, but the stuff between him and Bucky is so good. You mentioned the car, and it made me think of, could you move your seat? He says, "Nope." It's so good. Oh man, chemistry abounds here. I mean, with Anthony Mackie and Chris Evans for sure. Natasha's in the mix now. Bucky will be there in the third movie, obviously. But yeah, he's wanting to help, and I mean, they're finally going to get Falcon in the fight, which is very cool. Sitwell gets the phone call. It's actually not Pierce. His caller ID says Pierce, but it's actually Sam. He sees it from a distance, and he looks down. There's a laser pointed at his tie, which tells him, "Hey, this is the real deal here." That was a great moment, man. It was so good.
I think that's a great line to him. Why would I go get in the car with you? Because that looks like an expensive tie, and I would really hate to mess it up.
Yeah. They get him on a rooftop, because where else are you going to take him? They get him on a rooftop. Steve wants to know about the Lemurian star. Sitwell knows. He said, I know you're not going to throw me off the roof. It's not your style. He goes, "You're right. It's hers." And Natasha just throws him off the roof, just pushes him.
Just kicks him off. Just kicks him off of the roof like this is Sparta.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's good.
And then like as he's falling and like screaming, she's like, "Yeah, so how about her? Like, oh, the one with the lip piercing? No, I'm not ready for that."
Oh, that's great stuff, man. And of course, they're on the rooftop, so Falcon's going to catch him. First time we get to see him with the wings. And it's all CG, and I don't care because it looks freaking great. Falcon looks like Falcon. If Falcon had looked like the red, white, and the yellow star and the shirt open on his chest, I'm an old school I'm an old school fan. I would have been in love with that too. But what they did to make him look modern, I'm good with that too. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, I really like the red and white suit he uses in the beginning of the Falcon and Winter Soldier show. I think like
yeah,
that's the best Falcon MCU suit. But they're clearly going for the look from the Ultimate Comics, and that's what the Triskelion is from as well. So it all
very
makes sense.
true. One of the newest pops I got was Falcon in the red and white and black suit. It's pretty cool. So yeah. So he catches her, and basically Sitwell's in their pocket now because he has to be. Sitwell admits, talks about the algorithm that's on the flash drive. Um, he admits the algorithm is a plan to choose Insight's targets, anyone who's a threat to Hydra now or in the future. And Steve says, "How could it know?" And Sitwell laughs at him and says, "How could it not?" And in that moment, I'm thinking, man, Steve, you are in way over your head, brother. Like you are, you don't even know what these guys have planned.
Yeah, but I
Um,
mean, that's so Steve because he's not thinking like everybody else. He's not one of us that has a smartphone in his pocket and he's totally tapped into everything.
ah,
Sitwell is looking around like, what do you mean? Everybody is, we have everyone. We have everybody's data. What are you talking about, Steve?
yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point, actually. Yeah, um, that's really good stuff. He said the 21st century is a digital book. Zola taught Hydra how to read it. So yeah, it's great. And he also tells them that it evaluates people's past to predict their futures. And then he suddenly, because he's great, he realizes he said too much. And he says, Pierce is going to kill me. And he admits that the helicarrier will take targets down a few million at a time. This is where Winter Soldier shows up, and this is in the car, right? And he basically just pops up on the roof and takes Sitwell and just jerks him and throws him out in oncoming traffic, which is like, what a way to die, man.
Yeah,
Like, I
but
didn't see that coming. It was actually pretty shocking.
but again, this is why I said earlier it felt like this movie anything can happen. Like Sitwell had been in several movies up to this point. Like him just randomly being a Hydra agent just came out of nowhere. It just really felt like anything could happen when I first saw this movie. And then it's like you reveal he's a bad guy, and then he's just dead. It's like, wait, what?
He's a Hydra agent. He's a dead Hydra agent.
But again,
So,
every time Bucky's on screen, I feel like he could kill whoever he's on screen with, and like I feel
yep.
like this was a perfect example.
And dude, this is, and I feel like this movie is nothing but pivotal moments. This whole freaking movie is nothing but one big, meaningful moment after another. Well, this is another one because this is the highway scene. And man, talk about this, the car going over the bridge, all this chaos, all this mayhem, a bunch of stuff happening at one time. I mean, this is where we get to see how much damage the Winter Soldier can really lay down. We only got a glimpse of it with Fury in his SUV from earlier. Man, this is where this guy's at his best. Talk about this whole scene and how it unfolds here.
Yeah, I mean, again, like this guy is just a cold blooded killer. Just comes in, straight up kills Sitwell, and it's just like basically trying to pick the three of these characters off one by one. And it just feels like everybody that comes up against him, like he's got him almost. Like even when he's in the fight with Cap, after the whole rundown and he gets thrown off the bridge. Like he's in that fight the whole way. I mean, man, there is parts of that fight where he comes out with a knife at first and he swings it at him, and then he drops it to his other hand and flicks it back up. I was like,
Oh man.
it's so good. It's so good.
I mean, he is a murdering machine. That's his only mission is to kill. That's the only thing he's here for.
Yeah, he just comes straight out the gate, firing a grenade launcher. It's not even like he's just shooting like a handgun. He's shooting a
Yeah.
grenade launcher like right out of the gate.
And when the other guys from the strike team are handing him weapons, he just kind of casually walks by and takes the weapon as if it's nothing, as if it's just another day at the office. He's looking at shadows on the ground to see where people are standing. Like he's surveying. It's like having court vision. He knows where all the players are, and he's got the ball. Like it's man, dude, it's so good.
So,
And so he's tactical through the whole thing.
so the other part that I forget, just when he's chasing Black Widow down, and I seriously feared for her life. I thought he was going to kill her at one point. Um, when he's following her down the street and he rolls that little grenade under the car, and he's just standing there waiting for it to explode, and then it explodes, and he's like, "Oh, she didn't come back out afterwards. Maybe I guess I killed her." And so then she jumps on his neck, and he didn't even react to that either. He just kind of flings her off, like, "Get out of here."
Yeah. Like he's prepared for everything. Like, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, she is running at one point. I thought she had escaped him, and then all of a sudden he just shoots her like right in the shoulder. I was like, "Wow!"
Yeah, dude, because he gives it to Steve later. He shoots Steve like 3 times in that end sequence. It's crazy.
Um,
But yeah,
but yeah, and I mean, again, like I think the part where I thought he could kill her is when she was down and she was holding her shoulder, and he was coming around the corner of that car with the gun, and you could see Steve coming kind of out of the distance. But at first, like you didn't know if he would get there in time. It was very well shot scene.
yeah, for sure. He's the Gatling guns going through car windows, going through the bus. Um, Sam holding his own with the weapon, doing what he can, do what he can do to help. Cop cars exploding. I mean, this is great stuff, man. And Winter Soldier reloading and not even breathing hard. The metal arm looks fantastic. It's exactly to comic book specs. Um, it just looks great. There's nothing about this I don't love, man. I love this scene. This might be my favorite scene in the whole film in terms of action.
Yeah,
There's just so much here. Well, how about the way she fools him? You were talking about him rolling that grenade on her, but she's got that voice, and it's actually recording, and she's not even there to begin with. That's good stuff. That's smart spy stuff right there.
yeah, really great stuff. Yeah, and I think she thought she had him when she jumped off that car, and
Yeah,
it looked like she was going to try and strangle him with that wire, and he just was like, "Nope, get out of here."
yeah, like a fly on his back. It's all it was to him. Steve comes in. They have the big confrontation, and at one point, Steve runs in. He takes a punch to the shield. They go move for move. This is exactly what you thought it would be, and then some. These guys are so well trained. They know what they're doing. They know hand to hand with their eyes closed. He's knocking Steve back on his heels. This is probably the first guy. And Winter Soldier is not a super soldier. He's just a highly trained assassin, right? He never got the serum.
I think that they kind of acknowledge that he does have the serum in the show later, don't they? Because
Did they? Because I can't remember if they did or not.
because I mean, Zemo basically refers to him as a super soldier, so I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, that would be the only way for my explanation of how fast he is and how strong he is. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that I think in the movie he has the serum, or at least some like variant of the serum. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's keeping up with him, and I mean, he is just like at some points he's like knocking Steve on his heels.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Steve's holding his own. He's coming back against him. This might be the biggest test he's had since Red Skull.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of an enhanced being, being able to match him move for move. The mask gets ripped off here. And if you weren't a comic book fan going into this film, you probably are by now. And you see that it's not actually Winter Soldier. It's not some Russian guy that we're kind of led to believe at some points, but this is James Buchanan Barnes, otherwise known as Bucky. He says Bucky, and then he says, "Who the hell is Bucky?"
I think that is just like the perfect line for his reveal too, because
Yeah.
he just said it so coldly, like he's done everything else throughout the movie. He's just like, who?
Yeah. It's great. And dude, Evan's face when he sees him, like you said with Bucky, there's no recognition at all. Sam jumps in and he stops the confrontation from happening. Bucky tries to shoot him anyway. He fires a grenade and he gets away. But this thing does not end well for our heroes because they are finally captured. Shield strike has them dead to rights. And the one guy wants to kill Cap in the street, and Romo says, "Not here." I guess he figures too many people are watching. Good stuff, man. They've got them in the back of the trucks. They're leading them to what we believe is probably going to be where they're going to kill them. He's talking to Natasha. He says, Bucky looked right at me and didn't recognize me. He tells him his old experiment on Bucky 70 years ago, and it allowed him to survive the fall. There you go. There's my explanation. I forgot that bit, actually. Experiment doesn't necessarily mean serum, but how else do you explain it, for God's sake? Then we see that Maria Hill, surprise, is one of the agents in the car in riot gear, and she helps them escape. She takes them to Fury. And no, Fury's not dead after all. Who would have thunk it? We get to see one of the Russo brothers here. Joe Russo is popping in as Dr. Fine. He only has a few speaking parts here, but the Russo boys have shown up in the movies before. And I think, wasn't it Joe that was in Endgame in that scene with the with Steve doing the group therapy? Wasn't that him in that scene?
I
think.
I don't remember.
I don't think it was his brother. I think it's him. So yeah, they pop up here, or he pops up here. Fury explains he took a chemical to slow his heart and make him appear to be dead. Banner had developed it to reduce stress, which is an excellent explanation. Slows the pulse to 1 beat per minute. He did it to find out who he could trust. Because when the guy everybody wants dead is dead, then you find out who your friends are, I suppose. We go to this great scene of Winter Soldier getting his arm worked on. He's suddenly having flashbacks of being experimented on and receiving the arm in the first place. His memories are coming back. Pierce storms in, wants a mission report. He slaps him, which is crazy. Winter Soldier kind of comes back to reality. He wants to know who the man on the bridge is. Pierce says, you made him earlier in the week on another assignment. He says that his work has been a gift to all mankind. He has shaped the century, and he needs him to do it one more time. Pierce is definitely a heel here, kids. No doubt. Winter Soldier insists that he knew Steve. Pierce says to wipe him and start over because it's obvious this guy is broken again. We got to fix him again.
Oh man, this movie is just so good because it went from him being just so like what we've seen of him being terrifying for this entire movie, and he's sitting there with like this like doe-eyed look in his face, like, no, I knew him though, and it was just so sad. It was like. And then, we are like legitimately seeing him getting tortured when they put him back in that machine. Yeah, it's just horrible.
Really.
And like then the whole time, Ed Brubaker is just standing in the background watching it. It's hilarious.
Oh my God, I forgot that bit. Yeah, I forgot he was in that.
Yeah, Ed Brubaker is standing behind Robert Redford throughout the entire scene.
Man, yeah, dude, I completely forgot that bit. Actually, I'm about to go back and watch that scene again. Actually,
yeah, which I mean makes sense because this is like a scene very focused on Winter Soldier, and Winter Soldier is it's really his baby. Like, so it made sense.
Yeah, I mean, without him, this isn't the kind of movie they're making here, right? I mean, it's not even close.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And, not to get off on a tangent here, but Marvel needs to acknowledge the creators. For God's sake, there's been too many headlines recently, especially, of Marvel not doing right by the creators who bring this stuff to life. Without the creators on the page, you don't get these great stories in the MCU. I think that's got to be mentioned here,
Yeah, I do think that they need to treat the creators better. And I definitely thought about that while watching Hawkeye. Because so much of the Hawkeye show is based off of that Matt Fraction run. Like even the opening credits is completely based off of David Aja's illustrations. Like, I mean, the art style is exactly the same.
Yeah, no doubt. We hear about Fury's master plan here to get back. He wants to sneak server blades onto the 3 ships. Or maybe it's 4. Is it 3 or 4? I think it's 3. He wants to salvage S.H.I.E.L.D. Cap says no, it all goes. If Hydra goes, it all goes. And Fury says, I didn't know about Bucky. Cap says it's all goes, including Hydra. Fury looks at Sam. Sam says, don't look at me. I do what he does, only slower. Which is another great line. We get the scene on the bridge when Steve is standing there. He's flashed back into the day of his mom's funeral. Bucky gives him that line that's repeated later. I'm with you to the end of the line, pal. Same line from the first Avenger, which is great.
Yeah. the foreshadowing of Sam saying "I do what he does, just slower" is also great.
Oh man, I didn't even connect that. That's a good call. Yeah. Wow. Man, going back and watching these movies after stuff you've watched recently really changes perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that he says to Sam in this movie that is just like, oh, when you think about it later, it makes even more sense.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so uh, Sam tells Steve that Bucky is not the same man that he once was. Steve tells Sam to gear up. Sam says, "You wearing that?" And he says, "No, you're going to fight a war. You got to wear a uniform." And then we see that he has went back to the Smithsonian and stolen his original suit. We get the obligatory Stan Lee cameo this time as security guard. He says, "Oh man, I am so fired," which
Yeah.
is a great line from the master.
The Stanley appearance was great because I forgot where his cameo was in this movie, and it was great.
Yeah.
Uh, the thing that I also noticed with Sam and Steve is when he came in and he said, "I don't think that's the kind of person you save. I think that's the kind of person when you catch him, you put him down." And he was like, "I don't think I can do that." And he explained his whole thinking behind it. And when you tie that to the
Oh,
show and certain
yep.
things Sam does in that show, it's like you can just see how much Sam learned from him and how much Steve learned from Sam.
Yeah, because he didn't want to take that character down. What was her name? He didn't want to take her down that quickly. Like
Uh,
Bucky did, but he didn't.
yeah, yeah, Flag Smashers.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call. The World Council has arrived at the Triskelion. Pierce gives them something to give them full access. It's biometrically controlled. It's a lapel pin. It's cute. It's harmless. It's not so harmless. We'll find out later. Cap and company have arrived. They're in. And Cap gets on the intercom. Great moment here, dude. He tells S.H.I.E.L.D. the truth that Hydra has taken over, that Pierce is their leader. Strike and the Insight crew are Hydra as well. He tells them if they launch the carriers, Hydra will be able to kill everyone who stands in their way. The price of freedom is high and has always been, and as always has been, and it's a price that he's willing to pay. And if he's the only one, then so be it. But he's willing to bet that he's not. And then Sam, because Sam has always kind of talked to Steve like they're boys, like they're friends, says, "Did you write that down, or was it all off top of your head?" And it's that great bit, like in Endgame, right? When was it Rocket says, "Man, he is really good at that," and Ant-Man goes, "Right?" Like they're just so blown away by how good Steve is at giving speeches.
Oh, but see, this is why I feel like this is the movie where he really becomes Captain America. In the first movie,
Mm.
we see him do things as Captain America. In Avengers, we kind of get an idea of why he's such a great leader. But I feel like this speech is kind of like the embodiment of Captain America. And he never really reaches that height in the first movie. And I mean,
Yeah.
even all of the cool stuff he does, fight scenes wise, taking down a jet and all this stuff. Like I just feel like this is like a complete picture of Captain America.
Yeah. I mean, we may have mentioned this on the first Avenger. Is he the and this is going to be hard because they've done a great job of fleshing out a lot of characters. He's got to be one of the most fully fleshed out characters in the MCU. Is he the best, you think, at that, or the best one so far? Maybe.
I think for most people it's Tony. Because I
Yeah.
feel like Tony has one of the better character arcs throughout the entire franchise, and that's just not just
Ah.
his three movies, but just across all the movies. He probably has maybe the best character arc. Um, but I think by the end of the franchise, I ended up liking Steve the most. I feel like Steve is my favorite character throughout the entire franchise. And I think it's just because how good Chris Evans is. And I think it's because his trilogy is so good. I feel like if the Cap trilogy wasn't as good, I feel like most people wouldn't have fallen in love with Cap the way they did.
Yeah. I agree with that totally. Um, the game is over here for Pierce kids. The council is completely. It's funny how Steve gave that speech, and no one on the World Security Council didn't believe him. Even these people from other countries, dignitaries from other countries, believe him.
And
Yeah.
like, that's two things. One, they probably kind of didn't like Pierce to begin with. But two, it's freaking Captain America. Like, this, it's like Superman. This guy doesn't lie. He doesn't lie. He's Christopher Reeve, man. Like, so when he said it, they're like, oh, I knew it. I knew you were in trouble. Like, they just, that moment, I had forgotten how quickly they sided with Cap, which was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, because Cap's not a liar.
Right. Yeah. I love that. I love that stuff. Rumlow shows up. He wants the ships sent up anyway. The guy at the console, he's got like the he can do it, man. He can press the button and he won't launch the ships. He says, no, I'm not going to. He says, captain's orders. And so I think it was Rumlow that pulls his gun first, and Sharon pulls her gun and says, like he said, captain's orders. And we've got a standoff in this control center. And then, man, I think Rumlow might be the guy that shot first. And that's when it goes, chaos is erupting again. Rumlow, who's not just a bang, bang, shoot 'em up guy, pretty smart because he overrides the system and the carriers launch anyway. And Cap and Sam are there. They're in. And he says, hey, Cap, how do we know the good guys from the bad? He says, if they're shooting at you, they're bad, which is awesome. Pierce says, and dude, there again, at this point, we all know that Pierce is a bad guy, but the way he tries to justify it is not, Hell Hydra, the Red Skull was right. I love that guy. I like to dress like a Nazi in my spare time. None of that. He tries to rationalize it from a kind of a scary real world opinion here. It's not like something out of left field. He says, what if Pakistan marched into Mumbai tomorrow and you knew they were going to drag your daughters into a soccer stadium for execution and you could just stop it with a flick of the switch? Would you? Wouldn't you all? And he comes back and says, not if it was your switch. And then he breaks the glass that he was drinking champagne from. And
dude,
great
again,
moment, dude.
They nail all of the current day political stuff with America because there are so many things that Americans agree with that we shouldn't agree with. But phrased in the right way, you have people agreeing with it. And we saw that throughout the entire Trump administration of this guy is just a repugnant human being. And he is saying things that are terrible, but people are looking at it like, well, yeah, I do want to be safe. And you can go all the way back before that and use this as an analogy with the Bush regime and him, promising freedom. Again, that's back to the Patriot Act and promising, safety, but at what cost? Like, and the people at that point were so afraid because of 9/11, they weren't thinking about, what is it that we are paying? And that goes all the way to, Steve's speech of, I'm not willing to pay that cost.
Yeah.
And so I feel like all of those things hit because of where the country was over the last decade.
And it's funny because it all does tie into the books. It's not like they just wrote this stuff. I mean, this ties all the way in back when Steve Rogers in the books first lost the suit. He surrendered the suit voluntarily because the government had taken over the Captain America idea or whatever. And he had to report directly to them for the first time ever, really, since he had come back from being thawed out in the books. And so he surrendered the suit and basically saying, this flag represents a lot more than just you and a lot more than just me. This has to represent everyone. And I'm not going to be a tool for somebody, And that's when the John Walker storyline happened. Cap becomes U.S. agent, and then it's all, everything gets all mucked up. We have two Captain Americas fighting each other at one point in the books. I think that was issue 300 or 350, I believe. So you're right. The real world politics of the day is very much at play here, but also Marvel was coming up with this stuff in the 80s. Such good stuff, man.
Yeah. And I don't know. Like, I've seen people talk about Captain America comics and go, why is this politics in there? And it's like, but politics have always been a part of not just Marvel comics, but Captain America comics. Like, I feel like a good amount of his current day issues are based around real world politics.
You can't put the flag on a character and call him Captain America and not have it be a political book to some degree.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, otherwise it's just what it started as, and for some people it's just like a propaganda book.
Right. One of the dignitaries suddenly starts going all Bruce Lee on everybody on the strike team. And I have to admit, in the first couple of seconds, I'm like, man, this chick's like 55. She's killing it. She must do like, CrossFit or something. This is awesome. But no, it's actually Natasha. And she says, oh, I'm sorry. Did I step on your moment? Which is pretty cool.
Which is another Marvel Trump is the face mask. We've seen that mask tech several times now.
Where else have we seen it? Because I'm trying to recall.
It was used in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I know. Like there was a whole plot line in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for it. And it was used in another movie. I'm forgetting which one. It was in another movie. God, I cannot remember.
God, now that you mention it, it does sound familiar, but I can't.
Didn't you use it in the Black Widow movie as well? Or somebody else in the movie used it? No, her fake mom in the movie used it.
Yes, that's what it was. Oh my God, great call. Yeah, I forgot about that bit. I'm watching this again right now, and all the fight scenes outside the Triskelion when they're trying to launch these ships with Cap and Sam. And I got to say, in broad daylight, how good that Cap suit still looks. Like it still looks as good as it did in the first movie. Much better than the one from the first Avengers, in my opinion. Like, I just love that old school with the helmet with the chin strap. I love that stuff, man. I think he looks great in it. I know it's like a padded, not like muscle padding, but padded as if to show like it's got like ballistic, armor underneath or whatever. But I'm still a sucker for that suit, man.
Yeah, I really like the stealth suit at the beginning of the movie, but like he can't go back to that. Like he's not a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. That was the whole reason of him ditching that suit.
Right.
And going back to his old suit. I personally, there are other Cap suits that I like better than his Cap suit, but I do like the imagery of him going back to it.
Yeah. It's because now it really does look like Captain America. So all the stuff is going on outside. The council have Pierce at gunpoint. Natasha is dumping all of Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. secrets onto the net. I didn't expect that. I didn't see that coming. Cap has disabled one carrier. Sam has disabled another one. And then the Winter Soldier shows up, and it's like game over, man. He's wreaking havoc, doing what he does best. He takes a ship. Pierce tells Natasha that disabling the encryption is an executive order. It takes 2 Alpha level members. She says, don't worry, company's coming. A chopper lands. Nick Fury gets out. The first thing out of Pierce's mouth, it's great, was, did you get my flowers? Dude, Redford steals the scene so many times in this film. Like, that was the best line ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Again, I just can't go on enough about just how every time Winter Soldier is on screen, how do you kill this guy? Like there are all these guys in these jets trying to escape. He just pops on scene and disables one jet, and then somebody throws a grenade at him while the door of this other jet is closing. And he just picks it up and throws it in there and just keeps walking.
He's like the John Wick of the MCU at this point, because like he's a machine. You can't stop him. Like once he gets a mission, he gets a hit or a kill, he has to go. He's not going to stop.
Yeah,
I mean, he's that guy that'll pull the knife into his gut so he can take it and stab you with it.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the other parts about the third act is just seeing all this cool stuff that Falcon's doing. Like he's doing all this great aerial stuff. Like he deactivates the wings and goes into this somersault and forces the rockets to blow a hole in one of the helicarriers so he can get in. And he celebrates afterwards and he looks cool. And then he goes against Winter Soldier and he just snatches him out of the air like nothing and rips one of his wings off and just throws him off helicarrier.
Oh, man. Yeah, he grabs Sam by the wing and grounds him. He pulls one of Sam's wings off. Yeah, throws him off the carrier. Sam ejects the wing and pulls his chute. And I almost thought, dude, they're going to kill Falcon here, because it was too close to call for him pulling that chute.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like this guy, every time he's on screen with somebody, like it's 50-50 chance if they're going to survive.
Yeah, no kidding. So we didn't get to that bit, but Fury shows up. He asks him if he got the flowers, and he tells Nick, he says, I'm glad you're here. Fury wants to know, why'd you make me the head of S.H.I.E.L.D.? He said, because you're the best, the most ruthless person I've ever met. Pierce says, our enemies are your enemies. He's talking about Hydra in the plural, which is kind of weird. Our enemies are your enemies. Disorder, war. It's just a matter of time before a dirty bomb goes off in Moscow or an EMP fries Chicago. Diplomacy, holding action, Band-Aid. You know where I learned that? Bogota. You didn't ask. You just did what had to be done. I could bring order to the lives of 7 billion people by sacrificing 20 million. It's the next step, Nick, if you have the courage to take it. And Nick says, no, I have the courage not to. This kind of sounds like a Thanos type of speech, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, you can tell there's the real world stuff in it, but it's also the arms race that, the way everything changed once Thor shows up. Once Thor shows up, everything changes, and Fury acknowledges that in the Avengers movie, and I feel like they acknowledge it several other times throughout the MCU, but I think that that's a part of it. I think it's not just that. Other parts of the world like might be afraid of someone like Thor, or what a god walking around means, but we're looking at Hydra, where it has been undercover all this time, and they gamble on Project Insight because they're like, oh, we got to do something. Like, all of these metas are popping up, all of these threats to us are popping up, we've got to get rid of them. And he's disguising it by going, no, this is just what needs to be done. We all have the same enemy here.
Yeah. Yeah. Icy, emotionless, heartless logic. Yeah, it's terrifying. But it's, very real world stuff. No doubt about it. I love this one bit where Cap, when he gets blown off the carrier, Sam grabs him in midair and pulls him back up. And he says, you're a lot heavier than you look. And Cap says, I had a big breakfast, which is another great little one-liner for him in this movie. So Falcon is down, and he tells Cap, he asks him if he's okay. He says, I'm grounding, the suit's down. He apologizes to him, says, I'm sorry, Cap. And Rumlow is headed for the council. Winter Soldier confronts Steve. And this is the big epic, like as if their first fight wasn't entertaining enough. Here comes the real deal, man, because this is fight to the death time here. Cap says, a lot of people are going to die. I can't let that happen. And he gets nothing. And he says, please don't make me do this. But they got to fight. It's time to play the feud, right? So they fight. Cap throws the shield. Winter Storm is blocked. And the thing, of course, Phil, is that Cap has the last server blade. And if he doesn't insert this thing into this helicarrier, it's gonna launch, and it's gonna kill a whole bunch of people anyway, and all will be lost. And of course, Bucky's in front of him. Big time fight scene. Winter Soldier knocks the thing out of his hand. He has to go run to try to get it back. I mean, dude, this fight right here, this is what you this is the main event, what you buy the tickets to see, and this thing lived up to it, didn't it? I mean, it's great.
The thing that from both this movie and Civil War that I understood is that the Russos do very intimate final fights really well, and like when they take the fight to the ground and he's trying to get him to drop the blade, and he like broke his arm, and then he tried to get him. It looked like he tried to get him in an arm bar, and like it's all like very practical MMA stuff. He's like trying to pull out of it, and like it just looks so emotional and gut wrenching. And when I watched it this time, it reminded me of the fight in Civil War where they're both fighting Tony, and just how emotional and just how intimate the fight is.
Oh man, yeah, no doubt about it. He emotional is the right word too, because like in neither instance, Cap wants to be doing it. Cap does not want to be fighting in either one of these fights, man, but he has to.
Yeah. He's yelling at him, drop it, and he just won't. He's forcing him to break the arm, and when he breaks it, it's like, oh no.
Oh, that's great stuff. In the midst of all this, we're seeing Pierce, and basically what's happening is Pierce has a remote, and two of the dignitaries, which is what I'm calling these guys, these world leaders, they go down. He tells Natasha that the gizmos, these things that he's put on their lapels, they were armed the moment they put them on. So once again, he's got the better of them and he's in charge. And Cap finally cinches up. And so, okay, so in the midst of all this, we got the retinal scan, which I missed a few minutes ago here. But he's got the retinal scan happening, and Nick actually took off the eye patch because his, you know, Pierce had deleted all of his files and deleted the retinal scan, but Fury had his eye from when it was damaged by the cat, which we didn't know yet. The cat, scratched his eye out apparently, so he lives the. I'm never going to get over that. I'm sorry.
There's another scene where I thought about the cat when he mentioned it. And when he goes, the last time I trusted somebody, I lost an eye. And I was like, yeah, a cat.
Yeah, a cat. Dude, of all the stuff they've retrofit, I don't think they retrofitted Captain Marvel all that well. If I'm being honest. I don't feel that way. We've never done Captain Marvel here on the show. We might eventually, but I just don't know. So yeah, so I had to throw that in because I felt like it was important. But no, Pierce is back in charge, unfortunately. And Cap has finally cinched up, like you said. He's got Winter Soldier. He ends up breaking his arm. He chokes him out. He finally grabs the blade and he runs it up. Sam has got the drop on Rumlow. Rumlow tells him there are no prisoners with Hydra, just order. And order only comes from pain. Are you ready for yours? And Falcon says, man, shut the hell up, which is great. Winter Soldier has shot Cap for a third time from a distance. This is a gut shot. For ordinary men like us, we're goners at this point, but not for Cap. The carrier is coming online, even though when you saw this movie for the first time, and they're targeting, firing in 3, 2, 1. Dude, this is high stakes tension. Because we don't know if he's actually going to get the blade in there. Like we assume he is. But this movie isn't set in the real world. This movie is set in Marvel's universe. So that ship could have launched. It could have killed a whole bunch of people. We didn't even know. So, dude, I was watching this again and getting nervous thinking, hurry, hurry. Like the kid in me saying, go, Cap, put the thing in. Like I couldn't help it, man, because he gets it in just in time. They do a great job in this movie of building suspense for moments like this, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, the way, watching it this time, and I mean, I was legitimately scared. Again, yes. I felt like anything could happen in this movie. I was like, is he going to legitimately kill Cap? Because, I mean, he shot him, when he shot him that last time, and it looked like he shot him in the stomach. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, this was done really well. The pacing of it was really well. But watching it a second time, and I mean, well, this isn't just my second time watching it, but watching it this time, I was almost wondering, was Bucky pulling his shot? Because I was like, he could have just shot him in the head.
Ooh,
because he didn't have his helmet on at that point.
Yeah. Dude, good call, man. I didn't even think about that, actually. Yeah, good stuff. So Rumlow and Sam are still fighting, but their carrier is crashing into the Triskelion. And it's funny because Pierce is there. He tries to escape with Natasha, but Fury kills him. Maria gets the carrier to target the other three, tells Steve to get out. Steve says, fire now. She protests, but he wants her to do it. Once again, he's talking about sacrificing himself. The ship is getting fired on. Winter Soldier is pinned down by some wreckage. We get the bit with Pierce. Fury kills Pierce. As the ship is going down, Pierce says, Hail Hydra. Man, their medical and dental and like their insurance benefits plan must be great. Because these people to the death are saying Hail Hydra. Like, I don't know how many people, you could do a count of how many agents said Hail Hydra as they were breathing their last. We got the guy from First Avenger. We got Pierce. I'm sure that wasn't the only two. So yeah, must be great benefits over there with those Hydra folks. We get another standoff here. He's got pulls the wreckage off of Winter Soldier, and he says, "You know me." Bucky says, "No, I don't." He says, "Bucky, you've known me your whole life. Your name is James Buchanan Barnes." He said, "I'm not going to fight you. You're my friend." Winter Soldier keeps attacking. He says, "You're my mission." And he's got him down. He says, Steve says, "Then finish it, because I'm with you to the end of the line." And that's what does it. And then all of a sudden, the wreckage happens again. Steve gets blown out of the bottom. Winter Soldier watches him fall. But at the last possible second, Bucky jumps into the water and pulls him out up onto the mud there. And dude, this whole sequence, like we don't know we're going to see Winter Soldier again, but when he walks off, part of me's thinking, why didn't he just stay? Like, is it just because they're enemies and because he hasn't fully remembered everything? Like, you would think he'd want to stick around when he wakes up and says, "How do you know me? How do we know each other?" You know?
Well, two things. When he pulls that girder off of him, he slides under it. That was even more reason why I thought that he was pulling his shot, because he kind of let him save him. And so when he got up
Yeah.
and he started talking to him again, that's when he started trying to go back into the mission and trying to convince himself that he had to kill him. And oh man, that is just the dialogue in that scene when he's punching him and he's telling him like I'm not gonna leave you here. I'm not gonna kill you. And it's just so good. Like, so when he finally gives us the line from the flashback of "I'm with you to the end of the line," it's just like it's heartbreaking because you can see it in Sebastian Stan's face, the way he emotes in that moment where he's kind of like falling apart in that scene because he remembers. And like when he saves him, it just says everything about just what this movie represents for not just Steve as a character, but just where the world is now. Because it's not just that Steve is a man out of time; it's now that Bucky is a man out of time now, and he didn't get a chance to. He didn't get a chance to come and have a hero's welcome like Steve got. He got warped, so there's no going back for him. He couldn't stay there with Steve because at this point he had killed tons of civilians. He had killed tons of real Shield agents that weren't Hydra agents. If he stayed, he was getting thrown in jail or worse.
Good call. Yeah, good call.
This is a guy that we've seen like just like callously kill people all movie. Like really, even if they caught him, they probably weren't going to put him in jail. Like he was probably done, so he had no choice but to leave.
Yeah, like I don't know if they do the firing squad in the MCU, but if they did, he'd be the prime candidate for it.
Yeah, he couldn't stay. Like I feel like that would have been too happy of an ending for everything. Like he had to leave.
Yeah, because he's there. Yeah, he can't get redemption by just surrendering himself. He's got to. Yeah, good call. Plus, you don't have a third movie if he just sticks around.
Yeah.
So, great moment when Sam is at Steve's bedside. He's playing the Trouble Man soundtrack on his phone. Steve wakes up and realizes he's in a hospital, and of course he says, "On your left," which is great. It leads to a montage. Movie's nothing without a montage, kids. We see Sharon firing a pistol on a firing range. She's wearing a CIA shirt. Maria Hill is interviewing with Stark Industries. Senator Stern is arrested by the FBI. And I wanted a happier end for Senator Stern. Gosh darn it. He didn't get his happy ending. So Rumlow is still alive, leading the way for Crossbones later. Fury is in a safe house style box, like a what's the word I'm looking for here? Like a housing unit. What do they call these things? Storage containers, right?
Yeah.
So he's getting his passport or a passport. Natasha is testifying on Capitol Hill. They ask about Steve. She says, "I don't know where. I don't know what there is left for him to say. I think the wreck in the middle of the Potomac made his point." She tells them Hydra was selling them lies, not intelligence. And then one of them says, "There's some who feel you belong in a penitentiary." She says, "You're not going to put any of us in prison. You need us. The world is a vulnerable place. Yes, we help make it that way, but we're also the ones best qualified to defend it. So if you want to arrest me, arrest me. You'll know where to find me." And then she just walks out of the courtroom or out of Capitol Hill, out of the meeting room there, and just leaves. We see Fury take off his patch and he burns everything else. He puts on some sunglasses. And I got to tell you, looking back on this, when I first watched this movie, when I saw this happen, I thought, Shield's over. That's it. Like, this really feels like a turning point. Like, one of the things Marvel gets slammed for in the MCU films is circumstances don't often, there's no circumstances. There's no consequences to anything. Everybody's alive in the end. No one got hurt. No one got permanently injured or permanently dead or anything. But man, when I saw this film for the first time, I thought, this feels like a turning point. Fury's not going to be Shield again. Shield's gone. They're done. They're gone. It's over. And he's going to move on. He's going to become something else now. Like, dude, did you get that sense when you first watched this? Like everything's changing now.
Man, this was a gutsy call to go into the second Avengers movie and destroy Shield before the second movie. Like that was a gutsy call. And you also have Agents of Shield going on television at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, good call.
So that was a gutsy move to just completely get rid of Shield. I was wondering like how are they gonna move forward with that. I feel like by the way, watching Agent of Shield as the movie was going, I feel like the show got way better after this. It just got so much better. Yeah. I just can't say enough good things about this movie. I feel like that montage and just watching just how much happened within a span of 2 hours and just where all these characters are left off. Like you really care where all these characters go after this, just off of 2 hours.
Yeah, even the stuff with Maria Hill interviewing at Stark Industries. Did they ever follow up on that, by the way? Am I forgetting something?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like she is she shows up in other movies where she is basically just like a consultant.
Ah, that's right. Yeah, that is starting to sound familiar because I'd kind of forgotten that whole bit. We get to visit Nick Fury's gravesite, and he asked Steve about it. Steve says he'd get used to it because he had his own gravesite as well. And Nick says we've been data mining Hydra's files. Looks like a lot of rats didn't go down with the ship. I'm headed to Europe tonight. Wanted to ask you if you'd come. Steve says I got something I have to do first. And then he offers a spot to Sam, who says I'm more of a soldier than a spy. Great line. Fury shakes hands. If anyone asks for me, tell them they can find me right here. And then as he walks off, Natasha shows up and says that's as close you'll ever get to him saying thank you. And he asks if she's going with Fury, and she says no. She's blown all her cover. She has to go figure out a new one. He says it might take a while. She says I'm counting on it. She hands him a file in Russian. She tells him to call Sharon. She kisses him and says, be careful. You might not want to pull on that thread. So in Steve's hands, we have what we know to be the file on the Winter Soldier. Sam looks over his shoulder at the file and says, you're going after him. Steve says, you don't have to come with me. He says, I know. When do we start? So Sam begins the movie and Sam ends the movie, which is pretty freaking cool. We've got two scenes here post-film. The mid-credits scene is Baron von Strucker, the current head of Hydra, we assume. He's not worried about the Avengers. He plans to feed other Hydra facilities to them to keep them off their scent. They have Loki's scepter from the first Avengers film, and they also have Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. So we get our real first look at them. And then the post-credits scene, Bucky goes to the Captain America exhibit at the Smithsonian, and he is learning about who he is. So what do you think about the conclusion of this, the wrapping everything up, and also these two credit scenes here as well?
Man, it's so funny when you think about it that when you kind of look at Winter Soldier, it is kind of like the Disney Plus movie shows are kind of like a sequel to Winter Soldier, like a direct sequel to Winter Soldier. It's interesting because I mean it sets up everything that is in like most of the Disney Plus shows. But man, I remember just being so hyped after the movie, just as good as the movie was, to get to that final line of Sam going, "When do we start?" And it's just such a cool moment because um, out of everything that Sam goes through with Steve in this movie, he never questions them. He never says, "I don't want to do this," or "This is a bad idea." Whatever Steve says, he goes, I'm following your orders. I'm coming with you." And it's such a great parallel to where Bucky and Steve's relationship ends in this movie and where Sam's and his relationship begins. And again, that calls back to why he gave him the shield, because I think in a lot of ways, Steve wants to save Bucky, and maybe, in another lifetime he would have handed the shield down to Bucky, but that's just not what their relationship is anymore.
Yeah, and I think you said it best when this whole thing started here on this episode, that this is Sam's resume for becoming Captain America. This is his resume more than anything else in any other film he's done, or even the show, in my opinion. I mean, this is, if he hasn't proven that after this, I mean, who else does he hand that shield to in another version of Endgame? He can't hand it to Bucky, right? Because Bucky has too much blood on his hands. Falcon doesn't have that.
He has too much blood on his hands. I mean, you start the movie with him counseling like Sam, and then the first guy to come through the portal is Sam. He says, "On your left." Um, and so it means that much means that much more when he gives him the shield at the end of the movie. I'm gonna throw a take out here. Is Sam and Falcon the best hero and sidekick relationship we've ever seen in superhero trilogy? I kind of think that it is, because I don't think that we ever get a fully formed Robin in any Batman movie where he gets to the end of the trilogy and he gets to grow up and be Nightwing. And I feel like in so many ways that's what we got here. We got to see him be his partner for an entire franchise and then take on the mantle afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm totally fine with that. I don't. I'm sitting here thinking of who else I would put just in the running for that, and I don't have anybody. I mean, if you're, ooh, yeah, I don't. I do. I got nothing. I got nothing. I think it's a great, great question. I don't think I can't think of anybody. I think it's perfect. And I mean, Bucky did hold the shield as Captain America in the books, but it was different. I guess different circumstances and everything. But yeah, in terms of the MCU, he can't hold it. I mean, there's no one else except Sam that I can think of to hand this thing to.
Yeah, there's a conversation of why he should hold the shield, but I feel like in the same way that I think that this movie answers the question of why he chose Sam, I feel like Civil War tells you why he didn't pick Bucky, because I feel at the beginning at Civil War he might have picked Bucky, but after everything he went through at the end of that movie and everything it cost him, he couldn't possibly do that. I mean, especially the connection to Tony and his dad invented the shield. You can't give that shield to Bucky.
Right. Good call. Yeah. Well, kids, there you have it. There is Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and I love that this movie began with a lot of questions and it ended with a lot of questions, and we kind of feel like we figured out who all the traitors were. We got all that stuff squared away. And then maybe the third film will not be espionage. It'll be more of a shoot 'em up, punch 'em in the face kind of film, which it is. Still very cerebral, Civil War is, but that's another pod for another time. But yeah, that's as we started, we asked the question. I too cannot say this is my favorite Marvel film. I think for me personally, it's between Endgame and Black Panther, and that's so hard because I love so many of these movies so much, but for me, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Even the end credits of Winter Soldier, by the way, are freaking great.
Yeah. I don't know.
So good.
We might have a different conversation after we get this third Spider-Man movie.
I
don't know. So we don't know. I mean, like I said, I think it's a tough problem to have. I definitely feel like Winter Soldier is one of the best comic book movies of all time. If I was compiling a list of top 10, it would absolutely be on there.
Is this okay? All right. So I'll hit you with this because we've done this episode and it was a good one. Is this better in terms of this to the first one as Spider-Man 2 was in terms of going to the first movie?
I think that it is. I think, but I think it is for a lot of similar reasons why Spider-Man 2 is so good. I feel like Spider-Man 2, I feel like he comes into his own as Spider-Man. I feel like for a lot of things you can throw at Toby with people that don't think that he's a great Spider-Man, I feel like he feels like Peter Parker in that movie. He never feels like an actor playing Peter Parker. And I mean, whatever, you can throw whatever at him once he put the mask on, but that is a Peter Parker movie. Like, that is a perfect depiction of Peter Parker, in my opinion. And I feel like in a lot of ways, this is like a perfect depiction of what Captain America would be in, 2014.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's a great film, kids. If you haven't seen it in a while, watch it again. If you've never seen it, God, we just spoiled the whole thing for you. I didn't even warn you ahead of time. But yeah, this is a great movie, man. One of my favorites. Probably always will be. So we've exhausted a bunch of talking points here and gushed over this thing for a good long time. But let's see if we can take this thing home. Give me your last word on the Winter Soldier.
Oh, man. Probably, again, one of the best comic book movies of all time. And besides just a great comic book movie, I feel like it's one of my favorite movies. When I really look back on it, it's probably on my list of favorite movies.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. And it's, as far as universe building, world building, they do an excellent job because every Marvel movie, and I'm going to say it has to, and I don't say that begrudgingly. It has to because there's an overall theme here, kids. They want to link everything together, and I'm totally fine with that. But it just, for me, never feels like it's heavy-handed in this movie. It just feels like it's following a good story with great characters, and then in the end, it's leading to something else, which is totally fine. But yeah, this does feel like a standalone spy thriller. It feels like it just happens to be a comic book film, but it could have been just a straight action flick. I still hold to that. So yeah, as Phil said, one of my favorites as well. And I can't wait to see the next Captain America film starring Anthony Mackie. That's going to be that'll be a fun pod for sure. Can't wait to see what they do with it. But in the meantime, we got Chris Evans here, man, and that's a pretty good deal. So as long as we can enjoy him in past featurettes or features as Captain America, it's all good here for sure. And that is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.